If you want to see someone's true map, don't watch them on a sunny road. Watch them when the ground gives way and the lights go out. Pressure shrinks the world. The horizon narrows. The brain stops writing poetry and starts counting exits. Adrenaline shouts one word, live, and every other value tries to keep up. That's where loyalty gets tested. Not in calm rooms with coffee and smiles. In the hallway when the deadline moves up, supplies run low, or the storm is already at the door. Betrayal rarely arrives with a trumpet. It whispers. It nudges. It starts with a small edit of the truth, a name left out, a promise delayed because it's complicated right now. You rationalize. You say, I'll fix it later. I'll make it up to them when things calm down. The mind is a master defense lawyer. It turns survival into virtue, and it turns fear into strategy. Ever felt that pull in your gut when resources get tight? When you can either shield a friend or shield yourself? That's the pivot point. One path keeps the tribe whole. The other makes sure you make it home. And here's the hard part. Sometimes survival wins because the stakes aren't abstract. They're your job, your safety, your future. You don't need a villain in that moment. You just need a clock that's ticking. So how do people do it? They create distance. They make the person they're about to hurt feel a little less like us and a little more like them. They use clean words for messy choices. Restructuring. Reprioritizing. It's just not feasible. Clean words make sharp cuts feel surgical instead of cruel. It's a story we tell ourselves to sleep at night. Does choosing yourself make you a monster? Not always. Some lines force impossible math. You can be honest about that without pretending it's noble. Survival is an ancient drumbeat, older than any oath you've spoken. But here's the twist. Repeating the same choice rewires you. Each time you pick self over ally, it gets easier. The gap between who you say you are and what you do widens. That gap is where shame lives. That gap is also where people start to see the truth. If you're listening and wondering what you do when the heat rises, don't wait for the fire. Decide in the calm what lines you won't cross. Say them out loud. Write them down. Tell one person you trust. Make it harder to betray by making betrayal cost you your pride. And pick your allies carefully. Choose people who will pull you back to your values when your vision tunnels, who'll say, breathe, when your mind says, run. And if you've already crossed the line, own it. Don't wrap it in pretty language. Repair what you can. Some bridges won't rebuild, and that's the price. But a clear apology and a concrete change are the only way to stop the slide. When pressure mounts, we all feel the same ancient hand on the back pushing us toward the exit. The question isn't whether you feel it. It's who you decide to be while it's pushing. Picture this. Your idea walks into the room wearing someone else's name tag. Everyone smiles at it. Everyone claps. And you're standing there, invisible. That's stealing credit. It's when someone claims your work, your insight, your hours as their own. It's not a mix-up. It's a strategy. And it feeds on speed, silence, and the way groups remember the loudest voice, not the first spark. Why do people do it? Status, fear, scarcity. If they believe recognition is a tiny pie, they grab the biggest slice, fast. They'll do it when stakes are high. They'll do it when leaders are watching. And they'll do it when you're too polite to push back. Here's how the credit thief moves. Before a meeting, they seed your idea one-on-one, so it sounds like it came from them. In the room, they jump in after you speak and reframe your words a little louder. Same cake, new icing. Afterward, they send the recap email and swap the subject line from your concept to their initiative. And the sneakiest move of all, they use a heavy we to erase you. Red flags to notice. Praise that never includes names. Recaps that shift timelines so the origin disappears. Applause aimed at the person who summarized, not the person who created. And compliments that start with, "As I've been saying," when you know they weren't. So what do? First, leave a trail. Share drafts, notes, and summaries with clear markers. Your name, the date, the intent. Short and simple. Second, socialize your idea before the big moment. 2 or 3 allies who can say, "Yes, that's the approach you shared last week," can protect the origin. Third, practice the reclaim line so it comes out calm and clean, not defensive. Try this. "Thanks for echoing the concept I proposed earlier. Here's the next step I suggest." Or, "Appreciate the summary. To clarify, I introduced this framework on Monday, and here's how we can implement it." Notice the rhythm. You name the credit, then move the work forward. No apology, no anger, just ownership. If someone credits you publicly, honor it. "Thank you for naming that. Yes, I developed the idea, and I'm excited to collaborate." If you're a leader, set the culture. Say names. Freeze the theft in real time. Quick correction. This originated with Priya. Let's build from her draft. That tiny sentence teaches everyone what counts here. Credit, not volume. And here's a hard question. Have you ever stolen credit? Maybe you borrowed phrasing or stood a little too close to someone else's breakthrough. If so, fix it. Name the source. Apologize once. Make a habit of attribution. Respect compounds, and so does silence. The truth is simple. Ideas are a kind of oxygen. When one person hoards it, the room gets tight. When we name the origin, everyone breathes easier. So, draw your boundary lines, practice your reclaim sentences, and build a circle of allies who say your name when it matters. Because credit isn't vanity. It's proof of work. It's the bridge between effort and opportunity. And you deserve to stand on it with your own name tag. Some people don't argue with you. They argue with the parts of you that tremble. They don't need a louder voice. They just need the right bruise. Here's the move. They find a fear you already carry, being seen as lazy, being left out, messing up, and they press. Not hard, just enough to make you flinch. Then they offer relief, for a price. Picture this at work. You've been staying late for weeks. Your manager strolls by and says, casual as a shrug, "I guess some people just can't handle pressure." You feel that sting. You rush to prove you can. You say yes to everything, hand over your weekend, and still, somehow, it's never enough. Or think about a friend who knows your fear of being excluded. They post the plan without tagging you. Then they message, "Hey, if you can do me a favor, I'll save you a spot." It's not an invitation. It's leverage. Why does this tactic work? Because fear narrows your world. When shame or threat shows up, your brain sprints to safety. Fast compliance, fast apology, fast fix. Psychologically, this trick attacks your sense of safety. When safety drops, defenses spike, and you're easier to steer. When safety returns, people open up, cooperate, and think clearly, because safety lowers defenses and builds trust. And here's another lever you'll see. Forced favors. Someone floods you with help you didn't ask for, then cashes it in at the worst moment. That's the pressure of reciprocity being twisted into a trap. One of those predictable human switches manipulators love to flip, because we're wired to repay what we're given. So what do you do when you feel the bruise being pressed? Name the play. Quietly, to yourself first. This is shame pressure, or this is a reciprocity hook. Naming breaks the spell. Slow the moment. Buy time with a breath, a sip of water, or a simple line. I'll think about it and get back to you. Speed is the bully's best friend. Take it away. Reset the terms. Keep your voice even. Try. I'm happy to help, and I need a clear timeline, not pressure. Or, if this invite is conditional, I'll pass. Boundaries sound like calm facts, not apologies. And if it keeps happening, step back from the table. You're allowed to say no without a courtroom speech. You're allowed to refuse a deal that trades your dignity for approval. That's not cruelty. That's self-respect. Here's the twist. Exploiting weakness looks like power, but it's powered by fear. Real power is the opposite. It builds safety, first in yourself, then in the room. So nobody needs a bruise to feel in control. Notice the bruise. Refuse the bargain. Choose the kind of strength that doesn't need a weapon. The easiest applause you'll ever get. It comes after someone trips. There's a hush, then the whispers, then the dog pile. Jokes dressed as concern. Advice that sounds like a verdict. Heads nodding along because it feels safe. It feels righteous. It feels easy. Why do people kick when someone's down? It's quick status on the cheap. If I point at your mistake, mine seems smaller. It's bonding through a common enemy, the fast way to feel like a tribe. And it's fear. If I join the pile, maybe the pile won't land on me. Ever notice how the first comment is about the issue, and the fifth is about the person? That's the slide. It starts with one knock on a choice, then two knocks on competence, and before long, it's a story about their character. We stop solving the problem and start sculpting a villain. It feels tidy. It's lazy. Here's the tell. The volume goes up while the value goes down. People repeat the same point, just sharper. I'm only being honest becomes a shield for cruelty. Just trying to help becomes a scoreboard of every past slip. Silence shows up too, the quiet vote that says, go on, do your worst. If you're the one on the floor, breathe. Slow everything. Name what's happening, gently. I hear the pattern here is about me, not the issue. Can we stick to specifics? Ask for one clear example you can address today. Separate the mistake from your identity. You're not broken. You made a choice that can be fixed. If you're watching it happen, your voice matters more than you think. One sentence can change the air. I think we're piling on. What's the most helpful next step? Or, we can critique the work without attacking the person. Redirect to action. Anchor to facts. Give context that humanizes, not excuses. The goal isn't to rescue with a cape. It's to tilt the room back toward repair. And if you feel the itch to join the pile, try this line to yourself. Am I adding weight or adding value? Sometimes the kindest move is restraint. Sometimes it's a question asked softly. Sometimes it's a hand offered in private. People remember who spoke when it was easy to stay quiet. They also remember who stayed quiet when it was easy to speak. There's a difference between holding someone accountable and holding them underwater. One corrects. The other condemns. One asks for better. The other asks for blood. We all fall. We all misread, misstep, mess up. When it's your turn, you'll want a bridge, not a boot. So build the bridge now. Nudge the room toward repair. Choose words that lift, boundaries that stand, and actions that move things forward. Because character isn't measured at the top of the ladder. It's measured at the bottom, in how we act when someone else has slipped, and whether we help them stand. Ever felt a room tilt? Not because of an earthquake, but because one name gets tossed with a smirk, and suddenly the air leans the same way. That's the quiet start of a crowd turning on one person, not with evidence, but with momentum. Here's the reframe. It's less about truth and more about tempo. How fast a story spreads, how quickly a label sticks, how easily silence becomes permission. Here's what it looks like in real life. You're in a meeting or a group chat. Someone says, "No big deal, but Jamie always overcomplicates things," and laughs. A few people chuckle. Someone else piles on, "Yeah, classic Jamie." Now the room has a soundtrack. Eyes stop meeting Jamie's. Questions that were curious turn sharp. And the rest of the group doesn't need instructions. They just follow the rhythm. Psychologically, our brains are built to mirror the group. Belonging feels safe, and standing out can feel dangerous. So we copy the tone, accept the label, and glide with the current. Add a little fear of being targeted next, and you've got a crowd that polices itself. That's why a single phrase can become a brand, and a person becomes a caricature. The always late one, the drama one, the difficult one. But notice the weak link in this chain. It depends on speed, vagueness, and unspoken agreement. Slow any one of those, and the spell cracks. Ask for specifics. What exactly did Jamie overcomplicate? That sounds simple, almost boring, but it forces detail, which drains the drama. Vague labels hate daylight, widen the lens. Let's stick to the work, not the person. That's a gentle pivot that shifts attention from identity to behavior. It cools the temperature without making you the enemy. Offer a bridge. I want to hear Jamie's point fully. Give it a minute. You're not throwing a punch, you're giving time. Time breaks momentum. And here's the twist. You don't need to be loud to change a crowd. You just need to be first. The first calm voice. The first honest question. The first person who refuses to trade nuance for a cheap laugh. Isn't that risky? A little. But it's also leadership. Real leadership isn't about dominating a room. It's about creating enough safety for truth to breathe. When one person models that, others exhale. The current shifts. The same instincts that made the pile-on possible, mirroring, momentum, the pull of belonging, now start working for decency. If you've ever been the one on the receiving end, you know how heavy that silence feels. One sentence, said by one person, can feel like a rope thrown across a river. You don't forget who threw it. So if you feel a room start to tilt, don't panic. Don't match the speed. Slow it. Name the vagueness. Offer time. Invite the person back into the circle. Crowds aren't inherently cruel. They're just easily steered. Be the hand on the wheel, not the echo in the back seat. Ever watch someone stare at a mess they made like it's a magic trick, and the rabbit never appears? They blink, shrug, and say, "Huh? I didn't know." It's not confusion. It's cover. Feigning ignorance is the softest escape hatch in human behavior. It doesn't argue. It dissolves responsibility into fog. If I didn't know, how could I be at fault? That's the move. Here's how it shows up. A teammate misses a deadline and says, "Wait, that was mine." A roommate steps over a tower of dishes and asks, "There's a rotation." A partner forgets an important date and claims, "I thought you meant next week." Notice the pattern. The problem is obvious, but the person pretends the instructions were invisible. When you accept the act, you become the fixer, the explainer, the one who carries both the task and the tension. That's the hidden tax. Psychologically, this trick works because it buys time, lowers immediate conflict, and nudges you to teach the basics again. People love to be fair, and maybe they didn't know feels fair. But that fairness can be exploited. The antidote isn't anger, it's clarity. Name the fog, then switch on the light. When you calmly label what's happening and move to specifics, you lower emotional resistance and open the door to progress. Try this in the moment. First, anchor the reality. This was assigned to you last Friday. Then ask a grounded question. When did you first see it, and what did you think your part was? If they say, I didn't realize, you follow with, okay, going forward, what will you do by tomorrow, and what do you need from me? You're not arguing about the past. You're setting terms for the next step. That shift, from blame to concrete next actions, cuts off the escape route. It moves the conversation from fog to map. In a shared space, it can sound like, we've had the same dish rotation since winter. Tonight, you're up. If that's a problem, propose a swap, but it stays balanced. You're offering choice, not chasing them. You're drawing the line without drawing blood. Adding a simple, let's write down who owns what so we don't loop on this, turns a slippery pattern into a visible promise. Real-life snippets like this keep the idea concrete and easy to use. Here's the twist. It's not about catching someone in a lie. It's about refusing the role of unpaid teacher. Not a lecture, but a boundary. Not punishment, but responsibility. That contrast lands because our brains respond to clear, simple choices far better than vague scolding, and a calm, credible tone beats heat every time. So when ignorance walks into the room wearing a friendly smile, don't fight the smile. Cut through the fog. State what's true. Ask for specifics. Lock in ownership, and move on. Over time, people learn that with you, I didn't know doesn't erase the consequence. It only triggers clarity. That's how you shift the dynamic from confusion to accountability and from excuse to action. Power can sound like silence, the kind that watches you scramble and chooses not to move. You feel the eyes, you feel the pause, and then nothing. Withholding help is simple. Someone sees the struggle, has what you need, and holds back. It looks neutral from the outside, almost polite. But inside that quiet, there's strategy, sometimes growth, sometimes control. Is it always cruel? Not always. Letting a kid tie their own shoes teaches patience and skill. Letting a teammate own their work builds confidence. The difference lives in intent, timing, and cost. If the lesson is small and the stakes are low, the struggle can be a gift. If the stakes are high, the clock is ticking, and they still step back. That's a move. You've seen it. A co-worker who knows the fix but waits until the meeting ends, then says, I figured you had it. A friend who knows the address, watches you circle the block, and laughs. You never ask. A partner who withholds the easy answer to prove a point. Each moment hands them status without fingerprints. Why do people do it? Power without the mess. Punishment without the blow-up. Insecurity too. If you shine, they feel small. And there's the story they tell themselves. I'm teaching resilience. Maybe. Or maybe it's a pressure test designed to make you crack. Here's how the play lands. They frame it as tough love, set a task that's fuzzy, then step back. They offer hints that sound helpful but keep the key out of reach. They praise independence while quietly enjoying your panic. And when the dust settles, they say, you should have asked sooner, which shifts the blame to you. How do you spot it? Watch the cost. If stepping in would take them seconds and save you hours, but they still hang back, that's a flag. Notice the performance. Do they help only when others are watching? Do they talk about how much they would have helped after the damage is done? Do they turn help into a hoop you have to jump through? So what do? Name the silence. Say, I'm hitting a wall, and you have the missing piece. Can you share it now? It's calm, direct. It forces a choice. Preempt the game with clear asks and clear deadlines. Build more than one road, mentors, peers, backups, so no single gatekeeper controls your oxygen. And model the culture you want. Offer micro help that preserves dignity. A hint that unlocks the door, not a rescue that steals the win. When you're the one holding help, run 3 questions. Is the lesson worth the cost? Is this about their growth or my control? Will my silence protect their dignity? Sometimes letting someone struggle makes them stronger. Sometimes it just makes them bleed. Know which one you're choosing. And if someone's choosing the knife for you, step out of their story. Ask out loud. Document. Build another path. Your progress shouldn't depend on someone else's silence. No one pulls the fire alarm. They crack a window and let the smoke creep in, slow and silent. That's how quiet sabotage works. It's not a dramatic takedown. It's friction. A tiny misstep here, a small omission there, just enough to make you miss the mark while they look perfectly helpful. Here's what it looks like in real life. A teammate forgets to add you to the calendar invite, so you arrive late and disorganized. Someone shares the deck link 5 minutes before the meeting. Technically not withheld, just delayed. A manager praises you with a sting. You did great, considering. So the room hears a compliment and a seed of doubt at the same time. Or a friend frames discouragement as care. Are you sure you're ready for that? Soft voice, hard aim. And here's the twist. These moves hide behind plausible deniability. It's always a glitch, a mix-up, a misunderstanding. You can't point to a knife, just a row of paper cuts. Psychologically, quiet sabotage thrives on ambiguity and timing. When details are fuzzy and deadlines drift, the mind fills gaps, assumes good intent, and blames itself. That's why the pattern slips past your defenses, until the misses start stacking. So how do you spot it without becoming paranoid? Listen for repetition. 1 oops is life. 3 oops, same person, same theme, is a strategy. Watch the clock. Delays show up right before a handoff, not days before when a fix would be easy. Notice the compliment that shrinks you. Impressive for someone with your background. That's not praise. That's a leash. And when you see it, name what's happening. Calmly. Out loud. To stay on track, I need the final draft by noon and access to the folder right now. Clear words lock the door that ambiguity tries to slide through. Here's a simple move that protects you and sounds professional. Instead of, you dropped the ball, try, let's confirm who's sending the file by noon, and I'll recap next steps in writing. Then actually send that recap. Paper trails don't accuse, they align. If the pattern continues, tighten the system. Set earlier checkpoints. Ask for specifics. Which version? Which link? Whose name? Use short, kind nudges. Flagging this now so we don't scramble later. When boundaries are bright, saboteurs lose their shade. And if you're worried about sounding harsh, remember this. Clarity isn't aggression, it's protection. It's the difference between calling a storm and checking the forecast. One is drama, the other is preparation. Quiet sabotage is real, it's subtle, it feeds on your hesitation. But you're not helpless. Notice repetition. Tighten the timeline. Speak in specifics. Hold the line with a steady voice and a clear plan. Because the opposite of sabotage isn't a louder alarm. It's clean air, bright edges, and you steering the room with steady hands. No smoke, no fog, no oops to trip over. Hear that quiet shuffle? That's the sound of your memory moving furniture around when no one's looking. We do it more than we admit. A plan goes wrong, a choice ages badly, and, click, the narrative gets a touch-up. Not a lie exactly, more like a flattering filter. We weren't late. We were stuck behind impossible traffic. We didn't guess. We had a hunch. We weren't afraid. We were calculating. The story changes, and suddenly we're the steady hand in a storm we never saw coming. Why does it feel so easy? Because your mind isn't a camera, it's a storyteller. It wants coherence. It wants you to be the lead character with a clean arc. And when reality resists, the editor comes out. Trim this. Soften that. Turn "I panicked" into "I pivoted." It's protective armor for the ego, that small voice that whispers, "This wasn't my fault. I'm still the hero." Here's the twist. We don't just sell that upgraded story to other people. We buy it ourselves. We rehearse it. We repeat it. And with each retelling, the original fades. That's how regret gets buried under a layer of "I always knew." That's how lessons go missing. Have you caught yourself doing it? Pause the next time you hear these phrases slip out. To be honest, actually, what really happened? I always. Notice the smoothing. Notice the missing splinters. Were there doubts you're skipping? Was there a moment you froze, but now describe as calm? Did luck help more than skill? The real beats are rarely pretty. They're jagged. They're human. There's a cost to the rewrite. People can feel when a story's been sanded down. Trust thins. And inside, something worse happens. You lose the raw material you need to grow. You can't fix what you've edited out. So what helps? Try this tiny practice. When you tell a story about a decision, add one honest sentence that lowers your shield. At the time, I was scared. I guessed. I wanted approval. That single line acts like a pin in the map. It anchors the memory to the truth. You'll feel a sting. That's the signal. That's the part worth keeping. Another move. Name the helpers. Chance. Timing. Someone's kindness. When you share credit, you loosen the grip of the hero edit. Ironically, you come across stronger, because humility sounds like confidence that doesn't need polish. And when you catch someone else rewriting, don't pounce. Ask a gentle, curious question. What were you worried about then? You're inviting the unedited cut, not accusing them of lying. People will often step into that space and show you the real scene. Rewriting the past can feel harmless, even smart. But the unpolished version, the one with fear, luck, hesitation, and small wins, that's where the learning lives. Keep that version. Tell that version. It may not make you look better today, but it makes you become better tomorrow. That's the real upgrade. A group doesn't need a throne room to act like a kingdom. It just needs a table, a chat thread, a project channel, somewhere a nod means you're in, and a silence means you're not. Here's the move nobody names out loud. When someone doesn't match the rhythm, the group closes ranks. Not with a speech, with a shrug, a skipped invite, a private joke. Exiling Outsiders looks subtle, but it's a blunt instrument dressed as manners. Psychologically, it feels like safety, like tightening the circle will keep the warmth from leaking out. We crave belonging, and when uncertainty walks in wearing a different hat, we freeze it out to feel in control. Picture a small team at work. You pitch a new approach. Instead of engaging, two people share a look. Later, a message pings without your name on it. Quick sync, and a decision gets made without you. Nothing cruel was said, but the decision was the message. Or think about a friend group planning a weekend. One person loves early mornings and hiking. Another prefers late nights and music. Plans magically tilt one way every time, and the other way stops getting asked. Why do we do this? It's fast, it's tidy, and, in the short term, it bonds everyone who stayed. Exile can pass as efficiency, fewer opinions, fewer slowdowns. But here's the twist. Cutting out difference doesn't make the group more united. It makes it more brittle. The circle gets smaller, the ideas get thinner, and the culture becomes a mirror that only reflects itself. There's a better discipline than exile. Not agree with everything, but absorb what's different without losing the center. Think of it like a campfire. If you only burn one kind of wood, it flares quick and dies. Mix it right, and the fire lasts. In people terms, that means naming the value of the odd angle. I hear you want speed. They're pushing for quality. If we timebox the experiment, we can have both. Not policing, but practicing. Not purity, but strength. Psychologically, this works because you're swapping fear for a clearer framework, setting norms that make room for tension without shaming it. You're turning outsider into contributor, which lowers defenses and raises trust. And here's what's surprising. The more a group can metabolize difference, the more resilient it becomes under pressure. So, next time someone throws a left-field idea, pause before the quick nod to exile. Ask one clean question. What are they trying to protect or improve? Then make the smallest safe test that honors both sides. It won't feel as quick as closing the door, but it builds something doors can't. Gravity. Strong groups don't stay safe by shrinking. They stay strong by widening wisely. Exiling Outsiders looks ruthless. Including them, on purpose, is the real power move. Picture someone pressing a cold coin into your palm. You can't see it, but it weighs more than gold. That coin is fear, and some people spend it like cash. Here's how it works. Fear buys silence, compliance, and speed. When you feel threatened, you rush. You stop asking questions. You trade your peace for their approval, and the exchange rate always favors them. They keep value high by doing one thing, making you uncertain. Uncertain about rules, about your standing, about when the next hit will land. One day they're warm, the next they're ice. That swing isn't random, it's strategy. Intermittent reward trains the brain like a slot machine. A small kindness, a sudden snap, a sudden kindness again. You lean in, trying to predict the pattern. Meanwhile, they're counting the coins. They'll call it loyalty, or discipline, or tradition. But watch what follows. Secrets, triangulated whispers, public praise for the obedient and subtle shaming for the bold. The rules move, the bar rises, and the deadline is always yesterday. You're told you're special until you aren't. You are warned about what happened to the last person who pushed back. The cautionary tale becomes a billboard. Pay up or be next. Sound familiar? The boss who frames every request as a crisis, then hints your job depends on loyalty. The partner who goes quiet after you set a boundary, then returns with a smile that says, "Don't try that again." The friend group that makes jokes that are really warnings. None of this is accidental. It's a silent marketplace of power. Why does it work? Fear feels urgent. Your nervous system sprints to fix the threat, not to weigh the cost. And because the reward is unpredictable, you chase it harder. We're wired to belong, so the mere scent of exclusion triggers the alarm. In that panic, control looks like safety. Here's the twist. Once you see the currency, you can stop spending. Name it, out loud if you can. This is fear, not truth. Then ask a private question. What would this person lose if I wasn't afraid? If the answer is influence, you found the engine. Slow the tempo. Breathe. Refuse the emergency frame. This can wait until morning. Ask for specifics in writing. Define your yes and your no. Gather outside data so their story isn't the only story. Widen your circle. Fear shrinks in daylight. When they escalate, that's proof, not prophecy. You didn't cause the storm. You just stopped paying the toll. Sometimes you negotiate. Sometimes you step back. Sometimes you walk away. Costly at first, yes. But every choice you make without fear is a coin they can't collect. Remember this. Fear is their currency, not your identity. Your attention, your time, your boundaries. Those are the real tender. Keep them in your pocket. When you hold your fear, their wallet empties. And that's when you finally feel safe. Not because they said so, but because you did. Say nothing, and watch the truth hurry to fill the space. That's the move. Strategic silence. It's not passive. It's pressure without force. You ask a clean question, then you stop. No rescue, no rambling, no hint, just presence. And here's the twist. Most people will rush to cover the quiet, revealing more than they planned. Why does it work? Psychologically, silence lowers defenses. When there's no interruption and no push, the nervous system relaxes, and people feel safer stepping further into their own thoughts. That safety invites detail. It invites confession. It invites the part of the story that wasn't meant for daylight. Try it in a negotiation. You make your offer. Then you let the quiet stretch. Don't fill it with justifications. Don't sweeten it. Count to 5 in your head. Nod if you like. The other person will often talk to close the gap, about their budget, their real constraints, their pressure from above. Information you didn't have, now you do. Try it in a hard conversation. Instead of piling on evidence, ask, what feels most unfair to you right now? Then leave room. The silence becomes a mirror. People hear what they're saying as they say it. And sometimes they correct themselves mid-sentence. If you gently echo their last few words, just the last few, you'll pull more thread from the same spool. In interviews, silence is a spotlight. Someone shares a polished answer. You let it land. You stay curious, quiet, steady. Watch what appears in the next beat. A story, a hesitation, a tell. The silence pulls them off script. Here's the darker edge. We hate unresolved tension. We crave closure, approval, control. So when the quiet stretches, the fear of being judged or the need to look competent can kick in, and that's when people overshare. If someone wants to look powerful, they might leak strategy. If they want to look innocent, they might trip over timelines. Silence doesn't create the weakness. It reveals the one already there. Is this manipulative? It can be. The tool is neutral. The hand-holding it isn't. Use it to understand, not to humiliate. Use it to keep conversations clean, not to trap someone. Think of it as choosing connection over escalation, flipping the usual script from pushing harder to pausing smarter. A few simple cues help. Ask one sharp, respectful question. Stop talking. Keep your posture warm, not cold. Let your face say, "I'm listening." If they deflect, don't chase. Just repeat the question, slower. If they ramble, let them. The noise burns off. What remains is signal. And notice what silence does for you. It makes your words count. It sharpens your judgment. It turns scattered exchanges into real decisions. Because you're hearing what's actually there, not just what's loud. Strategic silence isn't empty. It's a spotlight, a lever, a quiet kind of power. Use it well, and people will show you who they are. A free coffee shouldn't feel like a contract, but listen to what happens next. Someone hands it to you with a warm smile, says it's on them, and tells you to enjoy. You feel good, seen. Then, a little later, they ask for a small help. Nothing huge, just a tiny yes. You feel that tug to return the kindness. That tug is the hook. We're wired to repay favors. It's a social glue. The problem is when kindness turns into a lever, gentle pressure that shifts your choices without you noticing. The first favor is light, almost weightless. The second one lands with a little more weight. And then, without drama, the ask grows teeth. Ever get the surprise gift at work, followed by, "Hey, could you stay late?" Or a neighbor who's always available with a tool or a lift, and later says, "While you're at it, could you help me all afternoon?" There's a pattern. Earn your trust with sweetness, then spend it on control. Here's the twist. They don't have to say, "You owe me." Your brain says it for them. Reciprocity's a reflex. The trickster just nudges it. Does the favor publicly so you feel watched. Time releases favors right before the ask, calls back to history. Remember when I helped you with that? It's kindness with a ledger. So what do you do when you feel that pull and something feels off? Pause. Silence breaks the spell. Thanks for the offer, and then breathe. If they press, say, "Let me think about it." Space lets you feel the real size of the ask. Name the shape of it, gently. "I appreciate your help. I want our favors to be gifts, not debts." Saying it out loud flips the light on. Manipulation hates light. Return with gratitude, not labor. A sincere thank you, a small treat, a kind note. Those repay warmth without opening a tab you never agreed to. You're closing the loop on your terms. Set a clean boundary. "I can't do that, but here's what I can do." Or simply, "No, I'm not available." Short, calm, no essay. A boundary isn't an apology. It's a fact. And if you're the one giving, give clean. Say, "No strings," and mean it. If you need something, ask directly. Real kindness doesn't borrow against the future. It doesn't weaponize warmth. It leaves people lighter, not indebted. Does that mean you should be suspicious of every generous act? No. It means you watch the pattern. Do favors come with urgency, scorekeeping, or guilt? Do the asks escalate? Do you feel smaller, obligated, a little trapped? That's your cue. Trust it. You can be kind without being captured. You can say yes freely and say no without fear. When someone tries to turn a smile into a leash, remember your power. Pause. Name it. Choose. That's the move that returns kindness to what it's meant to be. Simple, human, and free of strings. Here's a confession you don't hear often. Sometimes the fastest way to look innocent is to pick someone else to look guilty. It's quick. It's clean, and for a moment, it works. You know the move. A deadline slips, a message gets lost, a decision backfires. The room gets hot, eyes start searching, and your mind whispers, just point. Nudge the blame a few inches to the left. Say a name, shrug, and step aside. Throw them under the bus and keep walking. Why does this trick feel so tempting? Because fear loves shortcuts. We're wired to protect our image, our place in the tribe, our shot at being seen as competent. When the spotlight swings toward us, survival mode kicks in. The urge says, save yourself at any cost, even if the cost is someone else's reputation. But here's the twist. That short-term shield becomes a long-term stain. People remember the shove. They remember who spoke up to own it and who pointed fingers. Trust, once cracked, squeaks every time you walk across it. Even if no one calls you out, the room recalibrates. Your name tags along with a quiet question mark. Think about where this shows up. In a meeting, you blame the absent teammate who can't defend themselves. In a group project, you emphasize your part and underline their mistake. In a friendship, you hint that someone else started the drama, just to keep your hands looking clean. It's tidy, sure, until it isn't. So what do you do when the heat rises? First, pause. That pause is your power. It breaks the reflex and gives you a choice. Next, name the truth you're avoiding. Are you scared of looking careless? Afraid of losing influence? When you name the fear, it shrinks. Then, share the load without the shove. Try this. Here's what I missed. Here's what they missed. And here's what I'm doing to fix it. Notice the rhythm. Ownership. Facts. Repair. No grand speeches. Just steady honesty. And if you've already thrown someone under the bus, walk back. It's not fun, but it's freeing. Say, I was protecting myself and I wasn't fair. I'm setting it right. That kind of courage is contagious. Will people still try to sacrifice others for gain? Of course. But do you have to play that game? You're bigger than a moment of panic. Your reputation isn't a fragile glass that shatters with a single mistake. It's a bridge you build with small planks of integrity. Every time you choose accountability over accusation, the bridge holds. Every time you choose repair over deflection, the bridge grows. And here's the quiet reward. When something goes wrong again, because it will, the room will look your way, not with suspicion, but with trust. They'll know you won't sell anyone out to save yourself. They'll know you won't trade someone else's dignity for your own comfort. That's not softness. That's strength. Blame is cheap. Integrity is earned. Choose the path that costs more now and pays you back for a lifetime. Here's a trick most people never see coming. Someone can tell you the truth and still steer you exactly where they want. Selective truth-telling isn't lying. It's choosing the slice of reality that helps them, polishing it, and letting the rest sit in the shadows. A colleague showcases a win and skips the messy setup. A salesperson quotes the monthly price, but glides past the long-term fees. A partner shares where they were, but not who they were with. Every word can be true, yet the picture you build is tilted. Why does it work? Because your brain fills gaps. When a story has bright highlights, your mind paints in the missing background with friendly colours. The teller isn't adding fiction, they're subtracting friction. And that subtraction, those quiet parts, carry the real weight. Listen for the shape of the story. Are you hearing the result, but not the risk? The benefit, but not the cost? The headline, but not the timeline? Notice how they frame comparisons. It's better than last time. Better how? Better by a little or by a lot? Compared to what? If you don't define the frame, they'll choose the one that flatters them most. You'll also hear a flood of true but irrelevant detail. That's the smokescreen. The mind treats volume like proof. When people stack small truths, it sounds convincing and your guard drops, but the heart of the matter stays untouched. So how do you cut through it? Ask for the denominator. If someone says things improved, ask, out of what? If they share a win, ask, what did we pay for it? When they present the upside, follow with, what's the downside we're not talking about? If they give you a snapshot, say, walk me through the whole week, not just the best day. These questions yank the hidden corners into the light. Slow the pace. If the story rushes, press pause. Hold on. Say that again. Slowly. People who depend on momentum hate stillness. Silence is your ally. It forces expansion. It makes room for the parts they avoided. And here's the twist. Sometimes you're the one doing it. You emphasize the part that protects you. You skip the detail that complicates things. It isn't always malicious. It's human. But the moment you notice that habit in yourself, you'll spot it everywhere else. Want a simple gut check? Ask, if someone I care about were making a decision based on this, what would I need to add to make it fair? That single question turns selective truth into full context. Truth without context is a spotlight. It dazzles, it blinds, it flatters. Full truth is daylight. It shows the cracks and the depth and the real shape of things. Choose daylight. That's where your power, your choices, and your peace actually live. The first laugh isn't the problem. The quiet after it is. The moment people glance around, deciding who to stand with and who to stand on. Mocking in public is a status game dressed as a joke. One person swings a line, the room laughs, and suddenly you're framed as smaller. It looks harmless. It's not. Laughter is a signal. I'm with the mocker, not the mocked. That's why it stings. It's not just the words, it's the crowd shifting. So what's the move? First, breathe. Let the laugh die. People expect you to flinch fast or fire back. Don't. That beat is power returning to your hands. Then name the game, lightly. A calm, dry line works. That's a dig. Or, nice joke, at my expense. No heat, no apology. When you label it, you pull it out of the shadows. Next, reframe the stage. Pivot from you to the idea, from person to point. If we're serious, let's stick to the topic. Or, I'm fine being teased, just not being undermined. That phrase matters. It signals you're not thin-skinned, you're boundary set. What if they double down? Ask a clean question. What are you hoping to get with that? Now they have to explain the joke, and jokes rot in daylight. A second option. Turn to the room. Anyone else feel like that helps us? Neutral tone. You're recruiting witnesses back to fairness without begging for rescue. Here's the twist. Sometimes the best answer is giving the laugh a bigger, better container. If a friend gets mocked, you can step in with warmth, not war. We roast to show care, not to bruise. Let's keep it playful. Same social signal, different target. You move the tribe toward respect. But notice this. The trap is binary. Defend yourself, and you look defensive. Ignore it, and you look weak. That's why your tone matters more than your words. Warm face, steady voice, short sentences. You're showing you won't be baited, and you won't be bowed. What if you froze? Happens to everyone. Do a later reset. After the meeting, a simple, hey, that jab landed. I'm not okay with it. Keep me out of the punchlines. draws a line without drama. And at the next group moment, bring value early, make a clear point, share a solution, ask a sharp question. Status follows contribution. You overwrite the last memory. Why do people do this? Because it works. It spares them risk, wins quick laughs, and bumps their rank by lowering yours. It feeds on silence and shame. So flip the physics. Keep your center. Name the move. Reframe the stage. Use the crowd's attention to raise the bar, not bend your back. You won't stop every jab. You will change the room's price for them. And over time, the mocker keeps the joke, while you keep the respect. Ever notice how some hugs feel like handcuffs you don't see until they click? That's the trap of feigned friendship. The smile is warm, the timing perfect, the interest laser sharp. They mirror your jokes, your music, your worries. It feels like finding a twin soul in a crowded room. And then, quietly, the meter starts running. Here's how it often looks. They fast-track intimacy, sharing a raw confession on day 1 so you'll share one on day 2. They offer a thoughtful favor out of the blue, then park an invisible IOU in your pocket. They name-drop your heroes, cheer your wins, even defend you in little arguments, just loud enough for you to hear. It feels like loyalty. It's often leverage. They'll fish for a crisis. You seem off. What's really going on? If you open up, the story becomes currency. They'll frame it as care. I'm only telling you because I'm your friend. Notice the word. Notice the pressure it carries. And when a request finally lands, introductions, access, secrets, money, it's wrapped in the velvet of closeness, not a demand, a tiny ask. You know I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. So how do you spot it? Start with the pace. Real bonds breathe. They leave space for doubt, for no, for slow. Performances rush. If someone insists you're like family after one long chat, that's a tell. Track the ledger. If kindness always comes with a callback tone, a sigh, a look, after everything I've done, that's debt, not love. Test the boundary. Say no. Does their warmth cool, even a little? Does empathy evaporate, replaced by guilt, urgency, or a tiny threat? That turn is the truth. Here's the twist. Some of this can look like genuine care. Gifts are real. Support is real. Vulnerability is real. The difference lives in what happens when you don't comply. Real care stays. The act cracks. Protect yourself without hardening your heart. Slow your yes. You can like someone and still take your time. Keep favors clean. I appreciate this, and I don't want you to feel I owe you. Let's keep it simple. Use the small no, not today, and watch the response. Ask out loud, what happens if I can't do that? If the answer is shame or urgency, step back. If they isolate you from other voices, bring more voices in. Light breaks manipulation, and if you need an exit, try. I value what we've shared, and I'm not comfortable with that request. Repeat once, then stop explaining. Explanations become fuel for the next angle. Want a simple compass? Real friendship survives a no. It doesn't track points. It doesn't sprint. It asks. It doesn't corner. It protects your boundaries, even when they're inconvenient. If a hug starts to feel like a latch, listen to that small alarm. Your peace is not a bargaining chip. Your trust is not a door key. And your heart, your honest, human heart, isn't here to be used. Ever notice how the air changes when someone realizes you've got nowhere else to go? It gets tight, heavy, like a door closing behind you. That's the moment some people push harder, because they smell desperation. Exploiting desperation isn't loud. It's quiet pressure. It shows up as, "This offer ends today," said with a smile. Or, "Everyone else has already agreed," layered with a little shame. It's a landlord who waits until you've packed your boxes to raise the deposit. A boss who dangles your visa or your health benefits. A friend who keeps tally on favors until you're in their debt. Different faces, same move. Push harder when they know you're out of options. Why does it work? Because fear narrows your world. When the mind thinks there's only one door left, it stops checking for windows. Urgency steals your time. Scarcity steals your choices. Shame steals your voice. Here's the twist. The more desperate you feel, the more predictable you become. And predictable people are easy to steer. So how do you break that grip? First, slow the frame. Desperation says, "Now." You say, "Not yet." Even a short pause, one deep breath, a glass of water, a walk around the block, gives your brain room to think. If they won't grant a pause, that's a sign right there. Second, expand the map. Ask yourself, what are 4 other ways to get what I need? They don't have to be perfect, just alternatives. Call a second provider. Ask a different manager. Look at a temporary fix. It's not about the best option. It's about having options. Third, set one non-negotiable. One line you won't cross. Price, safety, dignity, sleep. Pick one. When people sense you've got a boundary, they recalibrate. And if they don't, you've got a clear reason to walk. Listen for the tells. They'll try fear. You'll lose everything. They'll try flattery. You're smarter than the others. They'll try isolation. Don't ask anyone else. You'll just get confused. Each is a lever. Name the lever and it loses power. Say, "That sounds like a scarcity pitch." Or, "I hear the urgency. My decision still needs time." Calm voice. Slow pace. You're teaching them you won't dance to the drum. Need a phrase you can use right now? Try this. "I won't decide under pressure. If that ends the offer, I'll accept the loss." It's simple. It's firm. It tells them their clock doesn't run your life. And if someone keeps pushing after you've said no, that's not a deal. That's a trap. You're not weak for feeling desperate. You're human. But when you add even a little space, a little choice, and a single clear boundary, you stop being easy prey. You stop playing their game. The air gets lighter. The door opens again. And you walk through on your own terms. You ever hear a crowd that isn't there? That's the trick. Someone steps in and says, everyone agrees, and suddenly the air gets heavy, your shoulders tense, and it feels risky to speak up. The crowd becomes a shadow behind you, nudging your choices. That shadow is manufactured. It's called false consensus. Here's how it plays out. A manager says, "We're all on the same page about working late." A friend shrugs. Everyone's cool splitting the bill evenly. An online comment declares, "The whole community thinks this." Notice the pattern. The word everyone does all the pushing. Not evidence, not names, not real votes. Why does it work? Because we're wired to scan for the tribe. Fitting in kept our ancestors safe. So our brains hear the whisper of agreement and translate it into a warning. Don't be the odd one out. That's the power here. Social proof without the proof. It's not just persuasion. It's a pressure cooker built on fear of standing alone. There are tells. The claim is vague, no specifics, just people, everyone, we all. The timing is rushed. Decide right now, no time to check. Dissent gets framed as rude, disloyal, or making this difficult. And anyone who asks for clarity is labelled the problem, not the tactic. So how do you break it without starting a fight? Go simple and precise. Ask, Who exactly agrees? By name. Say it calmly. If they dodge, you've learned something. Propose a quick check, an anonymous poll, a private message, a raise of hands without scanning faces. Here's the twist. Even the suggestion of a real count often makes the mirage disappear. You can also flip the frame. If this is truly the best idea, what's the strongest argument against it? Real consensus can handle friction. A fake one can't, or use time as a lever. Let's take 5 minutes and verify. If the claim is true, 5 minutes won't break it. If it's false, 5 minutes will. And watch your own language. If you catch yourself saying, "Everybody knows," pause. Do you mean that? Or are you nudging people because it's faster? Speed feels efficient, but trust is slow. Better to say, "Here's what I think, and here's why," then ask for honest pushback. Real agreement sounds messy. It includes yes, no, and I'm unsure. One more thing. If someone tries to shame you for asking, let the silence do some work. Breathe. Then say, "I'm not against the idea. I'm against deciding without clarity." Calm, steady, no spikes. You're not attacking them. You're deflating the illusion. In the end, false consensus is loud. Real consensus has texture. It's voices overlapping, questions raised, edges softened by facts and respect. If everyone agrees, but nobody can show their faces, it isn't consensus. It's a costume. Don't fear the pause. Ask the question. Make the invisible crowd take attendance. Ever notice how some people treat compliments like rare coins, spending them only when it buys them something? That's not shyness. That's a lever. Withholding praise is a quiet way to keep you orbiting their approval, always a little off balance, always reaching for a pat on the head that never quite arrives. And here's the twist. Your brain gets hooked on the chase. Intermittent rewards feel exciting, addictive, and confusing. One crumb today, nothing tomorrow, a lukewarm nod next week. You keep working harder for a well done that keeps moving just out of reach. Think about the boss who says, "Not bad," after you carry a project across the finish line. Think about the partner who goes silent when you do something thoughtful, then lights up only when there's an audience. Think about the friend who praises others loudly, but tells you in private, "You could do better." The message lands the same. Your value is conditional, and they hold the conditions. Why does this tactic work? Scarcity creates urgency. If recognition is rare, you'll treat it like gold, even when it's pocket change. It also shifts the power dynamic. Suddenly, you're auditioning for a role you already earned. And it scrambles your inner compass. When someone else controls the good job button, your sense of good starts to drift. So how do you spot it? The goalposts keep moving. The compliments are vague or delayed, especially after you've done something clearly strong. There's often comparison, "Look how they did it," meant to keep you insecure. And praise shows up only when it benefits them, not when it would genuinely support you. Here's the part they don't expect. You can step off that stage. Start by naming the pattern, even just to yourself. They're rationing approval to maintain control. Then set your own scoreboard. What does excellent look like? Specifically to you. Write it down, measure yourself against it, and celebrate your progress out loud. That's not arrogance. It's reclaiming your baseline. Ask for clarity instead of approval. Try this. What would excellent look like here? Give me 3 specifics. Specifics are hard to weaponize. Vibes are easy. And when you deliver, be the one to mark the win. This met the three specifics we outlined. You're not begging for praise. You're establishing facts. Diversify your feedback. Don't let one gatekeeper become the whole stadium. Seek input from people who are fair and concrete. If the usual withholder withholds again, respond with calm neutrality. Got it, and keep moving. No pleading, no chasing. And if you lead others, be generous and precise with recognition. Starve the scarcity. Praise isn't a luxury, it's fuel. When it's honest and clear, it builds competence and trust rather than dependence. Your worth isn't a coupon to be redeemed at someone else's counter. It's yours. Treat it like something abundant, because once you do, their silence loses its power, and your voice, finally, gets loud. Ever feel like you finally hit the mark, and someone slides the mark 2 steps farther? You're not imagining it. That's a move. It has a name. Moving the goalposts. Changing the rules after you meet them so no one else can win. Name it out loud, and the fog starts to clear. Because once you see the pattern, you stop chasing shadows and start protecting your sanity. Here's what it looks like in real life. Your manager says, "Hit this target and we'll talk promotion." You grind, you hit it, you show the numbers. Suddenly, it's, "Well, actually, we need you to lead a new project first." You do that. Now it's, "We're waiting on budget." The posts keep moving, and your hope keeps moving with them. Or a debate with a friend. You answer their question clearly, calmly. Then they say, "Okay, but that wasn't the real issue. Prove this other thing." The topic shifts, then shifts again, until winning means meeting a standard that didn't exist a minute ago. Psychologically, shifting criteria creates uncertainty, and uncertainty drains motivation and control. When the target keeps changing, you lose your sense of fairness and autonomy, the very things that make people collaborate and stay engaged. That tension isn't an accident, it's leverage. It keeps you working harder without getting closer, and that's the tell. It's not about truth or progress, it's about control. So how do you stop playing a rigged game? First, set the lines before the first kick. Ask, "If I do exactly this, does that count as done?" Then get the yes, preferably in writing. You're not being difficult. You're defining the field. If the posts move later, you can point back and say, "This was the agreement." Second, name the move, calmly. "It sounds like the standard changed after I met it." That's moving the goalposts. If the goal changes, let's reset together and be specific about what done means. Naming the pattern brings the conversation back to clarity instead of emotion. It reframes the moment from work harder to agree on rules, from chasing approval to choosing boundaries. Third, make the trade-off explicit. If I deliver A by Friday, you'll do B by Monday. Yes? Clear, mutual commitments. If that can't be honoured, you've learned something crucial without spending another ounce of energy. And if the posts keep sliding, you step off the field, not as a tantrum, as a principle. You choose spaces where effort maps to outcomes, where the scoreboard doesn't rewrite itself at halftime. Ask yourself, right now, what's the goal exactly? Who controls when it counts? What proof will we both accept? If those answers stay slippery, it's a sign. You're not failing, you're being played. The antidote isn't more hustle, it's more clarity, more boundaries, more "this is what done looks like." When you fix the lines, you reclaim your time, your energy, your sense of worth. And if someone can't live with fair rules, you don't need to live in their game. You can walk. You can find fields where progress is real, and the posts, finally, stand still. The fastest way to escape a trap. Point at the nearest door and call it a person. That's what blame shifting is. A quick sidestep from, I might be at fault, to, they made me do it. It shows up in offices, families, friend groups, anywhere there's pressure and a fear of consequences. You'll hear it in lines like, if they'd told me sooner, or, well, your instructions weren't clear, or the classic, it wasn't me, it was the system. Clever, right? It sounds reasonable. It even sounds calm. But underneath, it's a smokescreen. Why is it so tempting? Psychologically, we're wired to protect our image. When our identity feels threatened, the brain reaches for a quick shield. Excuses, deflection, fresh targets. That reflex is ancient. It's self-preservation, not truth-seeking. And once the first deflection lands, a second one is easier, then a third. Before long, the spotlight has moved, and the mess is still on the floor. Here's how it plays out in real life. A project misses the deadline. The room goes quiet. Someone says, "Look, I delivered my part. The delay happened upstream." Heads nod. Another adds, "I didn't get approvals." Now the story grows legs. Leadership was slow. Requirements changed. We're short-staffed. Until the original choices that actually caused the slip have vanished behind a fog of reasonable-sounding haze. Sound familiar? There are tells. Notice how the conversation jumps from specifics to vague generalities. Communication issues. Bad timing. Notice how the target changes mid-sentence, from a timeline to a teammate to the culture. And here's the twist. There's often a pinch of flattery baked in. I would have fixed it, but I trusted their judgment. The message is, I'm competent. Someone else messed up. So how do you cut through it without starting a war? Bring it back to the ground. Ask for the concrete. What decision did we make? On what day? Based on what information? Keep the questions simple and neutral. Facts over fireworks. Then model the thing everyone fears. Ownership. Try. Here's my slice. I underestimated the review time. Next time, I'll buffer an extra day. When you own a small piece, you pull the room toward reality. It lowers defenses. It sets a standard. And the blame carousel slows down. Here's the reframe. Accountability isn't humiliation. It's a tool for progress. Owning your part doesn't mean you're the villain. It means you're committed to the fix. That shift, from protecting your image to protecting the outcome, turns a standstill into momentum. If you're on the receiving end of finger-pointing, try this sequence. First, name what you're hearing, calmly. I'm hearing that approvals were slow. Second, anchor a timeline. Let's map the steps we took. Third, share your part. I missed a risk here. Then invite theirs. What part of this do you own? Not as a trap, as an invitation to step back into the same boat. Will everyone take it? No. Some people are committed to the dodge, but you don't have to be. The moment you choose ownership over image, the fear shrinks, the fix appears, and the room starts telling the truth again. That's not soft. That's power. Hear that tiny clink. That's the sound of a coin hitting the floor, while the safe walks out the back door. That's a token sacrifice. Give up something small, look a little hurt, and people lean in with sympathy. They think, wow, you paid a price. Meanwhile, the real prize slips by untouched. It's a magician's misdirection for morality. You see it when a boss fires one expendable employee after a scandal and calls it a day. You see it when a politician takes a symbolic pay cut, then keeps the machine roaring behind the curtain. You see it when someone confesses to a minor slip, Like, I sent a few flirty texts, while the bigger betrayal stays buried. The small loss buys them innocence, or at least a pause. Why does this work so well? We're wired to balance moral ledgers. If someone looks like they've suffered, even a little, it feels fair to forgive. A visible wound creates the sense of closure we crave. And here's the twist. The smaller the wound that looks big, the better it plays. A public apology, a forced resignation, a donation to charity. It looks costly. It's often cheap. So, how do you spot it? Start with scale. Ask yourself, what's the size of the benefit they're protecting compared to the size of the pain they're showing? If the math feels lopsided, watch closely. Notice the story shape too. Token sacrifices come with tight guardrails. This is the issue. This is the fix. No further questions. If curiosity gets redirected, if new facts are treated like attacks, you're staring at stagecraft. Listen for timing. The sacrifice often appears right when pressure peaks, just enough to release steam. Then, silence. Real accountability invites more light. Token moves dim it. Here's a simple counter. Ask the question behind the question. What big thing does this small loss protect? Money, power, access, reputation. Pick your treasure. Track changes, not statements. If the roots don't move, the leaves are theatre. Demand proportional repair. If harm is widespread, the response should be too. If the damage took years, so should the rebuilding. Real repair feels heavy. It leaves fingerprints. And keep an eye on your own habits. Ever offered a neat little confession to dodge the messy truth? We all want to look good. We all want to be forgiven. That urge can turn us into our own magician. If you catch yourself tossing out a shiny coin, pause. Say the big thing. It's harder. It's cleaner. That's how trust grows. What does genuine accountability sound like? It names the full harm. It stays to hear the answers. It changes systems, not just faces. It doesn't beg for applause. It expects consequences and accepts them. A token sacrifice is a mask. It's meant to make you feel relief, so you stop looking. Don't. Breathe. Look again. Follow the weight, not the sparkle. When the small loss tries to end the story, let it be the start of better questions. And keep your eyes on the safe, not the coin. Your calm sentence trips a hidden tripwire, and suddenly someone's acting scandalized like you just lit a match in a fireworks factory. That's feigned outrage. It looks like hurt, but it behaves like a shield. The goal isn't to feel, it's to control. It flips the script so you stop discussing the point and start defending your character. You raise a small concern. They gasp, "Wow, how dare you?" And now the topic isn't the issue at all. It's your supposed attack. Why does this work so well? Because outrage hijacks attention. It raises the emotional volume in the room, and when the volume goes up, clarity goes down. Psychologically, when people feel threatened, they stop listening and start protecting. Safety drops, defensiveness spikes, and the conversation collapses into noise. Here's a simple picture. You tell a teammate, "Hey, the numbers in that slide don't match finance." They recoil. "So you're calling me incompetent?" That jump isn't about accuracy. It's about grabbing the moral high ground. Now, if you push back, you look cruel. If you retreat, the mistake stays. That's the trap. So how do you step out of it without becoming a doormat? Start by refusing the performance. Don't match volume. Don't chase the accusation. Slow the pace. Use steady words and bring the focus back to specifics. A calm, clear tone creates psychological safety. More oxygen for thinking. Less fuel for drama. Name the shift. Gently. Try. I'm not questioning your worth. I'm questioning a number. Short, clean lines help the brain recenter. When you separate identity from the idea, you lower the stakes and reopen the door to facts. Ask for the part you can examine. Which exact sentence felt harsh? Force the vague to become concrete. Feigned outrage lives in fog. Specifics burn the fog away. Then re-anchor the conversation. I care about getting this right. Can we check the source together? Notice the move. Not defending yourself forever, but returning to the claim. Not fighting the theatre, but exiting the stage. And here's the twist. Sometimes the person knows exactly what they're doing. Sometimes they don't. Either way, the antidote is the same. You protect the frame. You decide if the conversation is about tone, timing, or truth. You may set a boundary. I'm happy to talk when we're calm. You may document and follow up in writing. You may invite a third party. The point is to make the path forward boring, factual, and clear. If you're thinking, but won't that seem cold? Consider the alternative. Spirals of accusation teach everyone that whoever shouts first wins. Reframing isn't cold. It's care with a backbone. It says, your feelings matter, and so do the facts. Leaning on simple structure, hook the point, state the idea, give a concrete example, then explain why it works. Helps people track with you and keeps the talk grounded instead of theatrical. One last question. When someone tries to bury a valid critique under a pile of theatrics, what's your job? Not to outrage them, to bring the temperature down, bring the facts back, and bring the humanity with you. The easiest way to break a rope isn't yanking harder. It's unraveling one strand, then another, until a gentle tug does the job. That's the trick with people too. Divide and conquer. If you can split a group, you can steer it. It starts small. A boss pulls two teammates aside with a whisper, "You're the real stars, unlike them." Now the room doesn't feel like a room anymore. It feels like camps. One side gets praise, the other gets rumors, and suddenly every decision is a referendum on loyalty, not truth. Why does this work? Because we're wired to protect our spot in the circle. When belonging feels shaky, fear gets loud, and fear will trade freedom for the promise of safety. A manipulator knows this. They create a tiny scarcity of approval, of information, of time, and watch people scramble. You'll see it at family dinners. An aunt stirs a comparison. You noticed how your brother never helps. You'll see it in group chats, where someone screenshots private messages to prove a point. You'll see it in classrooms, in friend groups, on teams, anywhere trust can be sliced thin. Psychologically, when people feel heard and included, cooperation rises. But if you erode that feeling, you can tilt them, nudge them, even control them, because their attention shifts from shared goals to protecting their place. Here's the twist. The antidote isn't fighting harder. It's knitting the strands back together. Name the wedge. Say, it sounds like we're being pitted against each other. Not accusatory, just clear. Silence keeps wedges in place. Naming them removes the magic. Invite the missing voice. Let's bring them in and hear it together. Dividers thrive on private echoes. A shared conversation kills the echo. Shift from sides to stakes. What do we both want that's bigger than this? It might be respect, accuracy, a fair process. When you lift the lens to shared stakes, you make the wedge look small. And here's a powerful move. Thank the truth, not the team. Instead of "I'm with you," say, "I'm with what's true." It tells everyone, including yourself, That your loyalty is to reality, not to whichever camp flatters you today. Will calling it out feel awkward? Sure. Will inviting everyone into the same room take longer? Usually. But it's cheaper than the quiet tax of suspicion, of friends double-checking every word, of co-workers hoarding info, of a family that smiles in photos and fights in whispers. Divide and conquer seems ruthless because it is, but connection can be just as relentless. It lowers defenses, rebuilds trust, and makes manipulation heavy and slow. When you feel the strands being pulled apart, pause, breathe, and reach for the other end of the rope. You don't have to pull harder. You just have to weave stronger. Choose connection over the shortcut of control. Choose courage over the fear of losing your place. Choose a bigger circle, so there's less room for wedges and more room for us. Picture a velvet collar that feels like a hug until you try to walk away. That's how exploitation often starts. Not with chains, but with comfort. Not with a threat, but with a promise. Stay loyal, and you'll belong. Here's the twist. Loyalty isn't the problem. It's beautiful. It's how families stick, teams win, and friendships last. The trap is when someone turns your devotion into their leverage. They praise your dedication. They make you feel seen. Then they quietly rewrite the rules so loyalty stops being love and becomes a leash. How does it happen? First, they flood you with warmth, gratitude, small favors, inside jokes. You feel chosen. Then they frame loyalty as proof of your character. Good people stick around, right? And if you question them, suddenly you're disloyal. Notice that shift. It's no longer about shared values. It's a test of obedience. You'll hear phrases like, "Only you understand me," or "You're the only one I can count on." Sounds flattering. It's actually isolation in disguise. You get pulled away from other voices until theirs is the only story that makes sense. Then come the moving goalposts. Last time you gave a little extra. This time, they need more. There's always a reason, always an emergency. And because you've invested so much already, you tell yourself, one more time. That's the sunk cost trap. You're paying yesterday's debt with tomorrow's peace. Ever felt guilty for saying no to something you never agreed to? That's part of the script. They'll remind you of everything they've done for you, even if those favors were the hook. Reciprocity turns into a scorecard you can never balance. So, how do you spot it early? Ask a simple question. Does loyalty flow both ways? When you mess up, do they protect your dignity? When they mess up, do they own it? Or do they spin it so you feel responsible? Say no once, just to see what happens. A healthy bond can handle a boundary. An exploitative one will punish you, maybe with silence, maybe with shame, maybe with a subtle withdrawal of affection. That reaction tells you everything. Watch the language. If loyalty is tied to your identity, if you're a good partner, a real friend, a true believer, you'll do this. Pause. Your worth isn't a coupon they get to redeem. Loyalty is a gift, not a contract. And listen for scarcity. You're lucky to be here. No one else gets what you get. Scarcity breeds fear. Fear breeds control. Control kills trust. Here's the quiet power move. Shift the metric. Instead of asking, "Am I loyal enough?" ask, "Is this loyalty bringing out my best? Do I feel more alive, more honest, more free?" If the answer is no, that's not loyalty. That's a cage. You can keep your heart open and your eyes sharp. You can stay devoted without becoming disposable. Choose bonds where loyalty means protection, not possession. Because real loyalty doesn't trap you. It stands guard while you grow. Hear this. Silence can bruise louder than any shout. There's a way some people play the game. They don't lie. They don't rant. They just wait. They hold back a detail, a screenshot, a message, then drop it when the room is full, when your guard is down, when the decision's already rolling. That's not an accident. It's strategy. And it works because attention is a lever. If they control when a fact appears, they control where everyone looks and how you look while reacting. Psychologically, timing hijacks focus, and emotion, scarcity and surprise do the heavy lifting. Here's the reframe. Keeping a secret isn't always about the secret. It's about the moment. Hold a card too early, it's ignored. Play it late, it's a weapon. The power sits in the reveal. Picture a weekly team meeting. You've prepped your update. Midway through, a coworker leans back and says, "Quick note, I found an error in last month's numbers." Your stomach drops. "When did you find it?" you ask. They shrug. "Yesterday. Thought we could discuss here." Now you're scrambling, defending, explaining, while they look calm, composed, helpful. The fact might be simple. The timing makes it sharp. Why does that cut so clean? Surprise compresses your options. You go reactive. You fill silence with explanations. The room remembers the flurry, not the fix. And here's the twist. This tactic also creates a moral high ground illusion. I'm just being transparent. The reveal feels righteous, even if it's staged. So how do you protect yourself without becoming ruthless? Shift the timing back in your favor. Before key moments, invite the reveal early. Is there anything I'm missing that would change today's decision? When you ask plainly, you make late surprises look less like helpful honesty and more like what they are: maneuvers. If a last-second bomb still drops, slow the tempo. Say, "Thanks for flagging that. Let's capture it, verify it, and address it after this agenda item." You're not dodging, you're rebalancing the clock so your brain and the room can think. Name the pattern gently. After the meeting, when critical info comes in last minute, it puts the team on defense. Next time, can you send it ahead so we can solve it together? That line does two things. It sets a boundary, and it subtly removes the incentive to use timing as a weapon. What if you're the one holding back? Ask yourself why. If the answer is protection, waiting until you've got context, clarity, or the right audience, that's strategy. If the answer is control, waiting to corner, embarrass, or win, that's a blade. Use it, and you'll cut the thing you need most: trust. This doesn't just live in offices. Friends do it. Partners do it. Negotiators, definitely. Anytime there's status, risk, or ego, someone will be tempted to delay the truth to sculpt the scene. The antidote is simple, not easy. Encourage early honesty, reward steady transparency, and refuse to panic when a reveal arrives on a drumbeat. Silence can defend. Silence can wound. Use your pauses to create clarity, not fear. And when someone tries to weaponize the reveal, don't swing back. Change the timing, widen the moment, and make space for the truth to land without blood. They rarely slam the door. They crack it just enough for you to doubt yourself, then whisper, "Careful." Punishing dissent doesn't start with handcuffs. It starts with a shrug, a joke at your expense, a meeting that mysteriously runs out of time when your turn arrives. You feel the temperature drop. Eyes avoid you. The message lands without a single word. Step out of line, and you'll stand alone. Why does this work so well? Because isolation scares us more than being wrong. Your brain reads social frost as danger, and it moves fast to keep you safe. It nudges you to nod, to sit still, to swallow the question. Fear does the heavy lifting, while power keeps its hands clean. Here's the subtle toolkit. Labels first. The moment you question you're negative, difficult, not a team player, labels become leashes. Then comes the moving target. Standards shift after you speak, so you're always a little out of bounds. Next, strategic kindness. A warm compliment, a small favor, right before the knife twists. You're left wondering if you imagine the cut. And here's the twist. Silence recruits enforcers, not officials, friends, colleagues, the group itself. They mirror the frown, forward the memo, skim past your message in the chat. Ordinary people become a soft wall that looks like polite order, but feels like a cage. Ever notice the script? You raise a concern, they praise your passion, then suggest a better time. That time never comes. You ask for clarity, they answer with fog, phrases that sound wise and say nothing. You cite facts, they shift to tone. Suddenly, the problem isn't the problem. The problem is you. So you start editing yourself, shortening questions, rounding off edges. That's the goal. Self-censorship dressed up as maturity. It feels like harmony. It's really quiet compliance. What can you do without turning yourself into a martyr? Start with small, steady questions. Curious, not combative. Curiosity is dissent in a softer coat. Anchor each point to something concrete. What was promised, what was measured, what was observed. Facts are hard to exile when they're calm. Find one ally who values truth over comfort, even privately. Two voices turn a whisper into a signal. Name the fog, gently. I'm hearing a lot of style notes, but not a clear answer. That line pulls the conversation back to the point, and if the cost keeps rising, step back and watch who benefits. When disagreement gets punished, someone's profits, status, money, control are being protected. Seeing that trade clarifies your choices. Sometimes the bravest move isn't louder pushback. It's refusing to play the rigged game. Ask yourself, right now, what question have you been shrinking? Who taught you that quiet equals safety? And if you spoke it, steadily, kindly, once, what truth would become visible? The door won't open by itself, but it's never locked from your side. Shame loses power the moment you speak with a clear, measured voice. Courage doesn't need to shout. It just needs to show up and keep standing. Hear the click of a locked door. No key passed, no seat pulled out, just silence. That's what hoarding power sounds like. Not loud, not obvious, just a quiet grip that keeps everyone else outside. Here's the move. Someone controls the flow of information, of credit, of decisions, and they keep it tight. They'll say, I'll take it from here. They'll say, not yet. They'll say, we can't risk that. It looks like standards. It feels like being careful. But underneath, it's fear dressed as control. Let's put it in a room you know. A manager runs every approval. Teams wait days for a yes. A teammate offers an idea, and the reply is, great, run it by me before you share. Another asks to present, and hears, let's have you sit in and watch first. Meetings end with, I'll circle back. They don't. Over time, folks stop raising their hand. They stop trying. They stop caring. Why does this work? At least for a while. Scarcity makes status feel bigger. If only one person holds the keys, everyone else lines up. But there's a cost. Energy drops. Decisions slow. Trust leaks. Creativity withers because fresh ideas hate closed windows. Here's the reframe. Real power isn't a prize you guard. It's a resource you circulate. When people feel seen and get a slice of agency, cooperation rises. bottlenecks loosen, and the work gets better. That's not softness. That's smart psychology. How do you spot hoarding power? Listen for phrases that keep you waiting. Notice when credit gets stuck in one pair of hands. Watch for permission on tiny things. Look for moving goalposts, requirements that change just when you meet them. And here's the twist. Sometimes it shows up as nice. Smiles, praise, then a gate you can't cross. If you've got power, try this. Hand the mic, deliberately. Say, "You own this decision," and mean it. Share the why, not just the what. Make criteria visible so people aren't guessing. Give credit out loud, by name. And set one rule you can keep. Information is shared by default, not hoarded by habit. It lowers defenses, builds safety, and makes people far more willing to engage and contribute. If you don't have power, you still have moves. Ask for clarity in public. What does a yes look like here? Name the delay. What do you need to greenlight this today? Offer a small, reversible test, so it's safer to say yes. And protect your spark. Keep building elsewhere if the gate won't open. One question to hold. Is the door locked for quality or for control? Because power that's hoarded shrinks a room. Power that's shared makes it breathe. And when a room can breathe, people can too. Ever notice how the biggest liar walks in with a suitcase, not a sentence? They don't argue a point, they unleash a flood. Dates, names, acronyms, side stories, half-relevant charts. And suddenly, you're not weighing truth, you're treading water. That's drowning in details. When someone overloads you to confuse and control, it's not an accident, it's a technique. Your brain has only so much working memory. Fill it with noise, and your judgment gets foggy. Fog breeds relief-seeking, and relief sounds like fine, whatever you say. The manipulator wins, not by being right, but by wearing you down. You'll see it in sales pitches that rattle through every spec under the sun, in meetings where a simple decision blooms into 20 side debates, in arguments where every tiny event from last month is dragged in like evidence. You'll see it in public debates too, the rapid-fire barrage that punishes you for asking for clarity. The tactic rewards speed and volume, because speed and volume feel like confidence. How do you spot it? The tempo spikes, the jargon thickens, the story zigzags, the goalpost shifts whenever you get close. And here's the tell. When you ask for the headline, they get irritated. So you pull the plug on the flood, slow the water, ask, "What's your one-sentence point?" Then be quiet. Silence is pressure for clarity. If they can't give you the spine of the claim, the ribs don't matter. Set the frame out loud. We're deciding one thing, not 20. Bring them back to the decision, not the detours. If they sprint into history, slice the timeline. What happened first, then next. Keep it in order. If they bury you in stats, flip the burden. Show me the few facts that actually prove this. Not everything, just the backbone. Take it out of the air and onto paper. Say you'll review a short summary tomorrow. When confusion is the weapon, time is a shield. And name the game gently. This feels like a lot of noise. I'm looking for signal. Naming it breaks the spell. It calls them back to reason, or exposes that they don't want to be there. How do you know it's working? You feel your shoulders drop. Your breathing slows. The room gets simple again. And if they push harder, remember, confusion is a leash. Clarity is a knife. You are not rude for wanting the point. You are not difficult for needing plain language. You're protecting your attention, which is your power. The ruthless trick thrives on your hurry, your politeness, your fear of looking dumb. Don't feed it. Ask for the headline. Ask for the stakes. Ask for the proof. Then, pause. Let the clutter fall away and choose from a place of calm. They paint the finish line brighter every week, but the track keeps extending under your feet. You sprint harder, thinking this time you'll cross it. This time you'll get what was promised. False promises work by turning your hope into a leash. The reward stays just out of reach, and somehow that feels like proof you're close. It's not an accident. It's a tactic. You've heard the lines. Hit this target and we'll talk. Stick around one more quarter. After this launch, there's a bump coming. The words sound reasonable. They're easy to repeat to yourself, and even easier to defend to other people. But notice the pattern. The goal moves, the story shifts, and the prize stays imaginary. Here's what it looks like up close. Your manager pulls you aside, lowers their voice, and says, "You're on the shortlist. Keep pushing late a little longer." You do. You carry weekends. You fix the mess no one else wants. Another review passes. Another explanation. Another almost. You start measuring your worth by how close you are to a door that never opens. Or you're doing favors for a friend who swears, "I've got you next time." There's always a next time. Or you're waiting on that brand to finally pay, because accounting is processing it. It's always processing. It never lands. Why do we stay? Because almost is sticky. Hope feels safer than a hard no. And when you've already poured time, energy, and pride into the promise, walking away feels like losing twice. Psychologically, vague rewards keep you chasing longer than clear ones. Ambiguity stretches the timeline, while certainty sets a boundary. Here's the reframe. Trade maybes for measurables. If someone offers a reward, ask for a date, a definition, and a decision maker. Not next season. What day? Not we'll see. What exactly changes and who signs it? If you hear fog instead of facts, you've got your answer. You can make it simple for yourself. 1. Name the promise out loud. Exact words. 2. Write down what has to happen. Specific, verifiable, shared. And here's the twist. Attach a limit you control. A calendar line where you reassess, not forever drift. If they're acting in good faith, clarity helps both of you. If they're not, clarity exposes the game. Does this mean shut the door on every delayed reward? No. It means you stop renting your life to almost. Real leaders put commitments in writing. Real friends follow through without being chased. Real opportunities don't need smoke machines. When someone keeps moving the goalposts, the problem isn't your effort, it's the field you're playing on. There's a kind of strength in choosing the solid, even if it's smaller, over the shiny that never arrives. You get your time back, your energy back, your self-respect back. And the moment you do, something shifts. You stop running in someone else's maze and start walking your own road. That's the promise worth keeping. The knife never comes while you're braced for it. It slides in when you lean in for the handshake. That's the trick. Not just betrayal, but timing as a weapon. Turning on someone at the exact second it costs them the most. When their guard is down, their name is on the line, and the room is watching. Why do people do it? Sometimes it's ambition. Sometimes fear. Often it's that quiet, hungry mix of insecurity and opportunity. They don't need to be smarter. They just need to wait. Here's how it usually plays out. First, cultivation. Warm smiles, late-night calls, small favors that feel like loyalty. Then positioning. They sit close to the decision, Collect receipts. Study your patterns. Learn the moments when you can't afford a mess. And finally, the reveal. Not a shout, but a clean little cut. A withheld email. A quiet no. A story told just loud enough to tilt the room. The damage lands when you're sprinting and can't stop to look down. How do you spot it before it snaps shut? Watch for sweetness that's too sweet, curiosity that's too surgical, questions about access dressed up as concern. Notice who cheers for you in private but goes quiet in public. See who only shows up when something is about to ship, launch, or be announced. And here's the tell. People who rewrite tiny pieces of the past to make you doubt your own memory. If the ground shifts under everyday facts, the big quake is coming. So, what's the move? You don't need to be paranoid. You need to be precise. Split your trust. No single person gets the whole map. Put critical promises in writing. Friendly, simple, dated. Stress test alliances with small reversible stakes before you bet your name. Ask the quiet question. If I lose here, what do they win? If the prize is big and the cost to you is bigger, tighten your circle and never be rushed into closeness. Real loyalty survives a slower pace. If it happens anyway, if you feel the floor go, breathe. Don't bleed in the water. Gather facts. Reduce your surface area. One clear response, not 10 frantic ones. Remove access, then decide on consequence. You're not proving your worth to the crowd. You're re-establishing your boundaries. That's power. Here's the twist. The strongest move isn't learning to betray better. It's choosing disciplined loyalty. Not blind loyalty. Disciplined loyalty. You keep your word, and you quietly step back from those who won't keep theirs. You hold your line even when the cheap win is right there. That's how you become the person others can bet on when the stakes are real. Protect your name, guard your time, share your trust in measured doses. And when you shake a hand, keep your eyes open, your heart steady, and your exit mapped. Loyalty is a promise. Timing is a blade. Choose which one you carry. A crowd can fit in your pocket now. It whispers, it roars, and if it turns on you, it doesn't knock. It kicks the door in. Public shaming is humiliation with a megaphone. One person points, another repeats, and the echo does the rest. It feels like justice because it's loud. It feels like truth because it's everywhere. But volume isn't proof, and repetition isn't reality. Here's how reputation gets destroyed. First, a moment gets plucked from a messy, human life. A sentence without the conversation. A clip without the lead-up. A photo without the before and after. Then comes the frame, the most ruthless trick of them all. Attach a motive. Not they messed up, but they are this kind of person. That shift brands the soul, not the behavior. And once the brand sticks, amplification begins. Screenshots travel faster than corrections. Jokes sharpen the blade. Morality enters the chat. Performative outrage signals virtue. And each share says, I'm on the right side. It feels good to belong, so the pile grows. The target's name becomes a symbol, and symbols don't get mercy. Notice the choreography. Demands appear. Apologize. Resign. Be removed. If an apology comes, the goalposts move. Too late. Too polished. Too convenient. If the target goes quiet, it's guilt. If they speak, it's defiance. There's no door that leads back inside. Why is this so powerful? Because shame is social death. Humans are wired for tribe. Your standing, who trusts you, who will sit with you, is survival in a modern suit. Public shaming weaponizes that wiring. The threat isn't just, you were wrong. It's, you don't belong. And here's the twist. The crowd believes it's punching up. Often, it's punching sideways or down. Algorithms love anger. Anger keeps people scrolling. So outrage gets a spotlight while nuance waits in the dark. The machine rewards escalation, so escalation becomes the script. What stops the bleeding? Start with friction. Ask, what's missing? Who benefits from this narrative? Is the claim about behavior or identity? Would it look different with 2 more minutes of context? Small questions slow the stampede. If you're the target, seek grounding before responding. Breathe, then separate the accusation into claims you can address. Acknowledge what's real. Refuse to fight the invented. Don't feed the spectacle. Speak to the people who matter and will actually listen. Private conversations repair more than public gladiator matches. And if you're in the crowd, pause. Would you say this in person to one face, without applause? Could you hold complexity out loud, not just online? Courage isn't joining the loudest circle. It's choosing a harder route. Curiosity, patience, proportion. Humiliation feels like quick justice. It's really cheap power. The cost is paid in trust, nuance, and the next person's humanity, maybe yours. So, keep your thumb over the share button for one more beat. Let that beat be the difference between a bruise and a scar, between shame and a chance to grow. You know that person who never sends the risky email, yet somehow their idea wins. They move without footprints. You rarely hear the order. You only see the outcome. Here's the pattern. Indirect power doesn't shove. It nudges. It frames a choice, plants a doubt, floats a quick thought, and lets someone else carry the message. When blame arrives, their hands look clean. When credit lands, they're already standing nearby. Imagine a team meeting. A deadline slipped. Before anyone speaks, someone clears their throat and says, "I'm not pointing fingers, but maybe the handoff wasn't clear." They pause. Heads turn. The room silently fills in the name. That sentence held no accusation, just air and implication. And yet suddenly you're defending yourself from something nobody actually said. Or picture a group chat about a family plan. One sibling writes, "Curious if mum even likes that restaurant." No protest, no command, just a question. And now the plan feels off. The sender didn't kill it. They simply moved it 2 inches, so it tips over by itself. Psychologically, this works because it taps attribution gaps and shared uncertainty. People rush to make sense, and the first frame offered often becomes the story. Even a soft nudge can steer the room, as long as it feels objective, or better yet, like it came from the group itself. And here's the twist. The most effective move isn't a statement. It's a question. A question keeps the speaker safe while inviting everyone else to take a side. So how do you spot it? Listen for distance. Some folks are saying, not to be dramatic, but just wondering if the language creates space between the speaker and the claim, that's a shadow. Notice messengers. If feedback always arrives on behalf of others, you're not hearing a report, you're hearing a tactic. Track timing. These moves appear right before a decision, when the group's story is still wet paint. What do you do when it's aimed at you? Name the move without the drama. I'm hearing a concern, but it sounds indirect. Can we put it on the table, clearly, so we can address it together? You're not fighting the person. You're changing the process. That reframe lowers defenses because you're asking for clarity and shared rules, not a win over them. Slow the pace. Ask for specifics. Invite ownership. Whose concern is this? Shadows hate bright, patient light. And if you're tempted to use these moves yourself, Ask why. If you need deniability, the room might not be safe, or the idea might not be ready. It's braver to stand in the light and speak plainly, even if the answer is no. That kind of straight talk builds trust you can use later when the stakes are higher. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, then lets other voices carry the echo. Learn the sound of that whisper so you can call it out, or choose not to use it. When you understand how blame slides, you also learn how to stop it. You can move in shadows, or you can turn on the light. Hear that soft click? That's the sound of a fake apology locking the door on real accountability. A hollow apology isn't about repair, it's about escape. It's a smoke bomb for anger. The words drift in. Sorry if. Sorry you feel that way. Sorry but. And your reaction gets framed as the problem. Their goal isn't healing. It's to stop the heat, regain control, and move on, untouched. Why does it work? We're trained to relax when we hear sorry. It triggers a script. Apology offered. Forgiveness granted. Scene over. If you keep pressing after those magic syllables, you can look unreasonable. They count on that. They lean on your kindness, your desire for peace, your fear of being too much. So how do you spot the trick? Listen for the pivot words. If, but, and you. Notice where the blame lands. I'm sorry you're upset, says your feelings are the problem. I'm sorry if I hurt you, puts doubt on what happened. I'm sorry, but cancels everything that came before it. Pay attention to the weight of the apology. Real ones feel steady and specific. Fake ones feel light, slippery, and fast. Watch the performance, the quick sigh, the exaggerated slump, the sudden rush to change the subject, or the opposite, flooding you with melodramatic self-blame. I'm the worst, I always mess up, until you end up comforting them. That's not remorse. That's manipulation wrapped in guilt theatre. What does a real apology carry? It names the harm clearly. It owns what happened without qualifiers. It asks what you need and offers concrete steps to make it right. And here's the key. It doesn't demand instant forgiveness on the spot. It gives you space. So what do you do when the apology is hollow? Slow it down. Keep your voice calm and let silence do some work. Then ask simple, grounding questions. What are you sorry for? Exactly. What will change so it doesn't happen again? When will you do that? If they dodge, repeat the question. If they push for quick forgiveness, try this. I'm not asking for punishment. I'm asking for change. You can also decouple forgiveness from proof. I'll accept your apology when I see the follow-through. That's not cruelty. That's boundaries. And if they withdraw the apology when you won't play along, that's the reveal. It wasn't remorse, it was a pressure valve. Note it. Adjust your trust accordingly. You're not required to accept an apology that asks you to abandon yourself. You're allowed to say, we'll revisit this when we can talk about impact and next steps. You're allowed to pause. You're allowed to leave. Remember, real repair has weight because it carries responsibility. Hollow apologies feel like air. They evaporate, and so does any chance of change. Trust that feeling. Name what you need. Hold the line. And keep the door to accountability open by refusing to let a single word slam it shut. Picture someone holding a door for you with a smile and lifting your wallet with the other hand. That's how exploitation often looks. Warm, familiar, polite. It borrows the costume of kindness to sneak past your guard. Exploiting naivety isn't about stupidity. It's about trust. It's about the beautiful habit of assuming people mean well. Predators know this. They mirror your tone. They praise your taste. They say your name like it's a secret handshake, and you feel seen. That glow is the bait. Here's the twist. Exploiters don't come at you with fangs. They come with urgency, a timer, a now or never. Urgency shrinks your thinking, and when your world gets small, their plan gets big. They also borrow authority, titles, uniforms, jargon. Authority quiets questions. Add a dash of shame, don't be difficult, don't ruin the vibe, and silence does the rest. Ever notice how a small favor turns into a bigger one? That's by design. It starts with, hold this, then sign this, then trust me. Each step feels tiny, but together they move you miles. By the time you look up, you've agreed to something you don't remember choosing. So how do you keep your heart open without leaving the door off the hinges? You slow the moment down. Exploitation needs speed. You need air. Try this line. I don't make decisions on the spot. It's simple. It's strong. It buys you space, and space is safety. You verify, not because you're cold, but because you value your yes. Send it in writing. I'll check with a friend. What's your full name and number? Real opportunities survive sunlight. Fake ones melt. You watch the sequence. Does praise come too early? Does the ask keep growing? Is the story always urgent, always emotional, always just shy of proof? Patterns reveal intentions, the honest and the ugly. You honor your discomfort. Your body tells the truth first. A tight throat, a rushing pulse, a weird fog in the head. That's your alarm system. You don't owe anyone an explanation for listening to it. And when someone calls you naive, remember this. Naivety isn't a flaw. It's unguarded trust. Trust is a strength, one of the brightest we have. It builds families, teams, communities. It just needs boundaries. Think of them as warm fences. You can wave over them, welcome people through them. But they're still there. Will saying no cost you approval? Maybe. Will it protect your time, your money, your peace? Absolutely. So keep your kindness. Keep your hope. Just pair them with a few firm lines. Say less when you feel pushed. Ask more when something sounds polished. Pause. Verify. Then choose. That's not cynicism. It's discernment. It's how you stay open without being open season. Because the dark side of human nature feeds on haste, flattery, and silence. You don't have to starve yourself to starve it. You just have to slow down, speak up, and keep your yes sacred. You ever watch someone's competence evaporate? The second responsibility walks into the room, like a light switch flipped off, shoulders up, voice soft. I'm just terrible at this. And suddenly the work is in your hands. That's not always clumsiness. Sometimes it's a tactic, feigning helplessness. The move is simple. Play small to shift the load, then act grateful so the rescuer keeps doing it. Here's how it shows up. A coworker stares at a spreadsheet, sighs. I swear, formulas hate me. You slide your chair over, fix it in 5 minutes. They beam. You're a lifesaver. Next week, same sigh, same beam, same rescue. At home, a roommate forgets how to load the dishwasher, turns the plates into a pottery display, and you redo it because you can't stand crooked bowls. In both cases, the burden shifts and stays. Why does it work? Because it hooks two instincts at once. First, empathy. Someone looks small. We want to lift them. Second, ego. It feels good to be the capable one. And here's the twist. Each time you step in, you teach them that underperforming gets them what they want. You're not just finishing a task, you're reinforcing a pattern. Psychologically, it taps into fairness and autonomy. We step in when we feel needed, and we keep stepping in when the other person acts like our help is the only bridge to done. Over time, the imbalance hardens. One person carries more, the other carries less, and both pretend it's accidental. So how do you stop it without becoming cold or cruel? Start by naming what's happening, calmly and out loud. I've noticed you pass this to me when it gets tricky. A clean, gentle mirror breaks the spell. Then pair a boundary with a choice. I can show you the steps, but I won't do the whole thing. Offer a slim runway, not a full flight. Ask them to try first. Give it 10 minutes. Write down where you get stuck, and then we'll review. You're still kind, but you're no longer the safety net, just the signpost. When they deflect with charm, you're just so much better at this. Don't debate your talent. Return the task. Maybe, but it's yours. I'll check your final pass at the end. If they escalate the helplessness, hold steady. Helplessness thrives on your urgency. It withers when you slow the tempo. And yes, sometimes it's not manipulation, just a skill gap. That's when one clear lesson, plus accountability, solves it. But when you see a pattern of selective incompetence, skilled at avoiding, unskilled only when work appears, it's time to reset the rules. Real-life examples and simple dialogue like this make the shift easier to picture and to practice. Your empathy is a strength. Don't let it become a leash. Set the line with warmth. Offer help that teaches, not help that hides the problem. Protect your time, your energy, and your standards. Because carrying someone once is kindness. Carrying them forever turns kindness into a quiet, grinding burden. The attack begins with a kindness, offered like a cup of tea, warm, sweet, and poisoned. A sigh, a lowered voice, and a line that sounds caring. I probably shouldn't share this. That's weaponized gossip. It doesn't look like a blade, but it cuts all the same. Here's how it works. The gossiper plants a seed of doubt, then wraps it in concern, so it feels moral to pass along. I'm only telling you because I care. They don't make a claim, they ask a question. Have you noticed they seem unstable? A question feels harmless, but it smuggles in an accusation. Then comes the fog. People are saying. Which people? No one you can pin down, so there's no one to challenge. And the finishing move, plausible deniability. If called out, they shrug. I was just worried. The intent gets hidden behind a polite mask. Why do smart people fall for it? Because our brains are built to protect us from social threats. A whisper about someone's character feels like a warning from the tribe, and warnings stick. A nasty rumor is like smoke that lingers long after the match is out. Even if you hear the truth later, a stain stays. That's the cruelty of it. The person targeted has to climb out of a hole they didn't dig. Here's the twist. Weaponized gossip often uses truth, just not all of it. A small true detail gets stretched, tilted, and framed until the story points in a darker direction. The half-truth makes the whole lie feel real. So how do you spot it and stop it? Listen for the cloak of virtue. If the message is harmful, but it's wrapped in, "I'm just concerned," pause. Ask for specifics. Who said this? What exactly happened? Vague stories evaporate under light. Then invite accountability. Have you told them directly? Weaponized gossip hates daylight. It wants you as the courier, not the witness. Name the move gently. This feels like it could hurt their reputation. I don't want to be part of that. You're not accusing, you're choosing. And if you've been targeted, don't get dragged into the mud. Respond with facts, briefly, Then shift to behavior. If there's a concern, I'm happy to discuss it face to face. Their narrative wants you emotional. Your calm is the counterpunch. Guard your own voice too. You build or break trust with tiny choices. Before you repeat a story, ask yourself a simple question. Would I say this if they were here? If the answer is no, that's your map. Slow down, change the subject, or turn the energy toward repair. Maybe we can check in with them, make sure they're okay. Weaponized gossip thrives on speed, secrecy, and fear. Starve it with slowness, sunlight, and courage. Be the person who closes the loop instead of widening it. Your words can be a rumor mill or a shield. Choose the shield. Sirens wail, and while most people slam the brakes, a few quietly check the mirrors, change lanes, and glide forward. That's the truth about chaos. It squeezes people into fight, flight, or freeze. And in that squeeze, chances appear. The question isn't, is it right to seize them? The real question is, what kind of opportunist do you want to be? There are two types, the vulture and the builder. The vulture profits from pain. The builder profits from being useful. Picture a sudden shake-up at work. The manager quits with no warning. Deadlines are stacked. Everyone's scrambling. The vulture whispers, "Let it burn," then grabs credit for the one task that survives. The builder takes a different route, gathers the team for 10 minutes, lists the top 3 deliverables, asks, who owns what? What's at risk? Then emails a simple plan and volunteers to handle the ugliest piece so others can breathe. Same chaos. 2 very different gains. One leaves resentment. The other leaves trust and opens a door that wasn't open yesterday. Why does this work? Psychologically, chaos shrinks time horizons, amplifies scarcity, and makes people cling to anything that signals safety and fairness. When you bring a clear plan, a steady voice, and a quick win, you lower defenses. People cooperate because they feel heard and respected, and that speeds real progress, not just noise. Here's a street-level example. The power goes out across your block. The vulture hikes the price of ice and flashlights. The builder knocks on doors, shares a power strip, and organizes a quick swap. Batteries for water, freezer space for phone charging. One person extracts, the other creates value, and, here's the twist, the builder still profits. They gain loyalty, referrals, even future favors that compound long after the lights come back on. Psychologically, that taps reciprocity and strengthens the social glue that makes every next crisis easier to navigate. Now, the ruthless playbook is real. People hoard attention in a scandal, stir rumors to push a rival out, or kindly step in just to lock everyone into their plan. Short term, it can work, but it burns your name. In chaos, reputations harden fast. If people feel used, they remember. If people feel helped, they remember longer. So how do you seize opportunity without crossing the line? Aim for 3 moves. First, stabilize one small thing, a list, a call, a clear next step. Second, trade fairly. If you benefit, make sure others do too, even in a modest way. Third, name the win for the group, so credit circulates and future doors open more easily. Under stress, those small signals of fairness and safety carry outsized weight, and they invite buy-in instead of backlash. Ask yourself, in the noise and the smoke, what would future you thank you for? Being the calm in the storm isn't soft, it's strategic. It's how you turn panic into footing, and footing into leverage that lasts. Be the one who brings the ladder, not the one who sells tickets to the rooftop. They won't shove you. They just close the pantry door and smile. That's the move. Cutting off resources. Not a dramatic takedown. A quiet suffocation. No headlines. No shouting. Just fewer refills. Fewer replies. Fewer doors that open when you knock. Resources aren't just cash. They're time, attention, information, introductions, tools, goodwill, energy. Starve any one of those long enough, and even the strongest engine coughs. How does it happen? Budgets are reallocated. Access is under review. Introductions get lost. Requests sit at the bottom of an inbox that never ends. A gatekeeper says, "Try again later." A platform tweaks the algorithm and your oxygen thins. People whisper, just enough to cool the room you walk into. And the biggest trick of all, they keep you busy with crumbs so you stop reaching for the loaf. Why does it work? Momentum isn't magic, it's fuel. When support dries up, you burn hope to keep going. That's costly. Doubt spreads faster than news, and soon even allies hesitate. The story turns. Maybe you're not worth it. Maybe this can wait. Maybe you're done. That story, told softly, repeated often, becomes reality. So how do you spot it? You feel a sudden quiet where there used to be buzz. Replies stretch from days to weeks. The phrase, "we're reevaluating," shows up like a bruise. Paperwork goes missing, then reappears with new rules. Invitations slow. Your metrics dip without a clear cause. And you catch yourself apologizing for taking up space. What do? First, name it. When you can say, "This is a choke point," you stop blaming your talent and start fixing the pipeline. Second, build redundancy. 2 suppliers, 2 channels, 2 ways to reach your people. If one artery clogs, the heart still beats. Third, make support easy. Ask for something concrete, small, and time-bound. Remove friction so allies can say yes without thinking twice. Fourth, store your oxygen. Savings aren't just money, they're saved time, batch tasks, templates, playbooks, offline backups, a bank of goodwill you've earned by helping others first. Fifth, move smaller and faster. Ship the next thing, not the perfect thing. Progress itself attracts new fuel. And here's the twist. You can turn scarcity into design. Constraints sharpen choices. If you can't buy attention, earn it with story. If the front door locks, try side doors. Partners, communities, rooms that welcome your work. Let momentum be built, not begged. Will some people still try to starve you out? Yes, and you'll see them clearly. Cutting resources is a power play that reveals character. Use it and you win short, but you lose trust. Resist it and you grow durable. Protect your fuel. Protect your focus. Feed your fire with small, steady logs, not just big promises. Because the quiet war is supply, and the side that keeps breathing, keeps building, wins. The fastest way to get past your guard isn't an argument. It's a sugar-dipped compliment that slides right in, sits on your ego, and whispers, "Say yes." Empty flattery works because it feels good. It tells you you're special without asking for proof. And here's the twist. It's often a setup. Psychologically, flattery taps into reciprocity and lowers our defenses, so we feel a subtle urge to give something back, time, access, a favor, before we've even asked ourselves what's real here. Picture this. You're packing up, almost out the door, and a coworker floats over. You are incredible. Honestly, no one solves problems like you. You smile. Nice to hear, right? Then comes the pivot. Could you stay late and finish the report? You're just the best at it. Notice the sequence. Inflate, then extract. praise with a price tag, or a stranger online drops hyper-polished comments. You're brilliant, unique, different. After a few rounds, they ask for a quick favor, a link click, a share, a phone call. The flattery is the velvet rope. The ask is the club. So how do you spot the empty kind? Look for vagueness, compliments that could be said to anyone. Watch for urgency, praise that rushes straight into an ask. Listen for volume over detail, lots of glow, zero specifics. And notice the drop-off. If their warmth evaporates when you set a boundary, you weren't being valued, you were being targeted. Here's a small move that changes the whole game. Slow the moment. When praise comes, separate it from the request. You can say, "Thanks, what stood out to you?" Then pause. If they can't name anything real, you've learned something. If they can, great, but keep the decision separate. I appreciate that. For the request, I'll need to check my priorities. You honor the words without renting out your backbone. Another move. Name the pattern without heat. I'm hearing a lot of praise tied to a quick ask. I make decisions based on bandwidth and goals, not compliments. Calm, clear, consistent. Now, a reframe. Praise itself isn't the villain. The empty kind is. Real praise is specific, anchored to effort or choices, and it shows up without an invoice. That kind builds sturdy confidence because it reinforces what you did, not just who you are. It encourages repeatable behavior, not fragile ego spikes. Ask yourself, in those sweet-talking moments, what do they want right after the compliment? If I delay my answer, does the warmth stay or vanish? What would I decide here if the praise never arrived? You don't need cynicism, just curiosity. Curiosity keeps your feet on the ground while your ego tries to float. Guard your attention. Guard your yes. When flattery knocks, let discernment answer the door. Because your time, your energy, your integrity, those aren't prizes to be won with glitter words. They're your compass. And you decide who gets to walk in your orbit, not because they said you're amazing, but because it's aligned with your values, your limits, and your real worth. The part that stings isn't the insult. It's the shrug that follows. Just being honest. You know that line. It's thrown like a cloak over a shove. Honesty becomes a costume, and underneath, there's plain old cruelty. The words might be true, but ask yourself, what's the purpose? Is it to help or to hurt? Here's the quiet trick. A person picks a sharp fact, strips it of context, then times it for maximum damage. They aim high level. You're lazy. You're not attractive. You'll never make it. So there's nothing you can fix. That's not feedback. That's a verdict. And verdicts don't guide. They pin you to the wall. Real honesty has a direction. It points toward repair or growth or clarity. Cruelty just points at you. So how can you tell the difference? Listen for consent, aim, and effort. Consent means, did you ask for this truth, or did it crash through the door uninvited? Aim means, is it about a behavior you can change, or is it a label glued to your identity? Effort means, is there a path offered, even a small one, or just a mic drop? Another clue, specificity. When you missed the deadline, it created stress for the team. Is specific. It's a map. You're irresponsible is a stamp on your forehead. One helps, the other harms. And here's the twist. Sometimes we do this to ourselves. We call it tough love. We call it being realistic. But I'm just being real is often code for I'm scared. Fear dresses up as truth, and then our inner critic gets to feel righteous. Watch for that. Self-honesty still needs compassion, or it turns into self-sabotage. So what do you say to the human who drops a bomb and hides behind honesty? Try this. I'm open to feedback, but I won't accept disrespect. What's the goal here? Helping me improve or venting? Then pause. Silence reveals intent. If they're here to help, the tone shifts. If not, you'll hear it. You can also draw the line with curiosity. What's the specific behavior you're talking about? What would better look like next time? Vague cruelty hates detail. It dissolves under questions. And if you're the one delivering the hard truth, add 3 guardrails. Ask for permission. Are you open to an observation? Focus on behaviors you witnessed, not identity. Offer a next step, even a small one. Here's what could help. Then, soften your landing. Honesty doesn't lose power when it's kind. It gains it. Remember, truth without empathy is aggression. Empathy without truth is avoidance. We need both. Otherwise, we end up excusing harm with a halo and calling it virtue. So the next time you feel that sting, slow down. Separate the fact from the spear. Ask what the words are for. If they're for growth, you'll feel a door crack open. If they're for harm, you'll feel the ground drop. Honor the truth. Reject the weapon. Your boundaries are not an argument against honesty. They're what make honest talk safe, useful, and actually, finally, true. Ever met someone who smiles at you while quietly laying banana peels in your path? That's the art of setting traps in advance. It looks friendly. It sounds helpful. It's engineered so you trip later when they need you to look clumsy. Here's how it starts. They plant a tiny assumption, a fake no rush, paired with a silent, earlier expectation. Later, they point to the calendar and act shocked. You're late, they say, but the deadline you missed was never actually said out loud. Another move. They overload you with information, then hide one crucial detail, like the door code, the updated spreadsheet, the final clause. When you fail, it's your oversight. The trap wasn't the missing piece. The trap was making you believe you had everything. They'll also bait with praise, not the warm, honest kind, the sugar-coated kind that inflates your ego just enough to make you careless. You're the best presenter here, so you can wing it. Sounds flattering. It's actually a setup to watch you go in unprepared. And here's the twist. The trap is built long before the reveal. They seed emails with vague phrasing so they can remember it differently. They frame a plan, so the only way it works is if you sacrifice sleep, then call it team spirit when you protest. They pre-approve a risky path, then step aside when it backfires, palms up, clean as snow. Why does this work? Because we trust smiles. We trust momentum. We fill in blanks with the stories we want to be true, about fairness, about teamwork, about our own capability. And our brains crave harmony, so we ignore the squeak in the floorboard that would have warned us. So how do you spot the groundwork? Listen for soft certainty. If someone's words are gentle, but their structure is tight, that's a signal. No worries, paired with, I'll need it first thing. Feel free, paired with, the client is waiting. Watch the pairings, not the tone. Notice who owns the specifics. If you're the only one with accountability dates, but they're the only one controlling inputs, that's a trap shape. If instructions are fuzzy until the last minute, that's another. Ask clean questions, out loud, in writing. What exactly is due, by when, and with what resources? Who locks the decision? Who holds the risk? If the answers dance or drift, press again. A real partner meets clarity with clarity. A trap setter meets clarity with fog. And when you sense the floor tilting, slow the pace. Break tasks into smaller checkpoints. Share summaries back, even if it feels redundant. Move the conversation from vibe to proof. Not because you're paranoid, because you're protecting your future self. One more thing. If someone keeps saving you from problems they designed, they're not a hero. They're a stagehand, pulling ropes behind the curtain. You deserve better than a performance. Spot the scaffolding. Name the stakes. Keep your footing. And if you've laid a few peels yourself, step back, clean up, and choose a harder, braver path. That's how the floor gets safer for everyone. Pick a door, any door, but the hallway still ends at my office. That's the trick, not magic. Design. People crave control, so you hand them choices, wide and shiny, and every path loops back to your goal. It feels like freedom. It's a guided tour. Think about the snack counter at a theatre. Small popcorn hurts. Large feels like too much, so they slide in a medium that sits just under the price of large. Suddenly the large looks like a bargain, and your hand moves before your mind does. That medium isn't for eating. It's a lure, a decoy. The outcome is the same. Sell more corn, more soda, more margin. Or the subscription page that whispers, basic, better, best. The names do the steering. Basic sounds like you're settling. Best flatters your ego. The middle tier becomes the safe harbor, not because you need it, but because it feels smart. Here's the twist. All three tiers were planned to win. One locks you in, one ups your spend, one collects your data. Different outfits, same destination. Sometimes the choice isn't even about what, it's about how. Do you want to pay monthly or yearly? Notice what's missing, whether to buy at all. Framing nudges you across the line while you argue with yourself about timing. You feel decisive, they feel richer, and the quiet killer is the default. A tiny box is pre-checked, so you agree to share, to auto-renew, to add the warranty. Defaults are sticky because they borrow your trust. We glide with the grain. We tell ourselves we'll fix it later. Later rarely comes. Why does this work? Because more options signals safety. It feeds the story that you're in charge. The brain relaxes when it gets to choose, even if the choice is a costume. That's the illusion. Many doors, one hallway. If you build offers, use it with care. Give options that all serve your goal, but do it transparently. Help people find the right fit without hiding the exits. You win today, and you keep the relationship tomorrow. If you're on the receiving end, slow the moment. Ask yourself, out loud if you have to, what's the choice I'm not being shown? What's my goal, not theirs? What happens if I wait one day? What if I pick none? Those questions break the spell. They turn the lights up in the funhouse. When the mirror shows 3 versions of you, pick the one that's walking out the door. Real choice isn't how many buttons you can press. It's whether the outcome aligns with your values. So yes, pick a door if you want, but choose your hallway first. And remember, the cleanest power move isn't to have every option. It's to know when to create your own. They don't attack your flaws. They crown your strengths, then tighten the crown until it cuts. Here's the move. They take what you're proud of, your kindness, your honesty, your loyalty, and they praise it so loudly you feel seen. Then they add a hook. They turn that praise into a debt. You're kind. Suddenly, you're the only one who understands, so you're staying late, covering messes, saying yes while your own life waits in the hallway. That's not a compliment. That's a leash disguised as gratitude. You're honest? They push you to be brutally honest, then call you harsh when your truth doesn't serve them. Now you're the problem, not the situation, not the lie. You're loyal? They test it, again and again. They'll say, it's just this once, then it's twice, then it's always. Loyalty becomes permission for their worst behavior, and you're stuck defending the very thing draining you. You're calm? They'll bring you chaos. They'll ask for your steady voice, then blame your calm for their storm. If you cared, you'd be more upset. Notice the trick. They shift the standard until you can't win. And here's the twist. They'll claim your strength is dangerous when it's used for you. Your ambition is selfish. Your boundaries are cold. Your forgiveness is proof. They can do it again. Praise when it serves them. Punishment when it serves you. So how do you stop the spin? Name the tactic out loud, at least to yourself. My kindness isn't a contract. My honesty isn't a weapon. My loyalty isn't a trap. When you name it, you see it. When you see it, you can choose. Set an edge. A strength needs a boundary, or it collapses into a burden. Try this line. I care, and I won't do that. Both truths can live in the same breath. Caring doesn't require surrender. Ask the clarifying question that breaks their spell. What exactly are you asking me to do? Vague pressure thrives in the dark. Specific asks shrink. If they can't say it clearly, they shouldn't be asking. Flip the frame. If honesty is too harsh, try. Would you like me to be less clear? If loyalty is not enough, ask, what loyalty looks healthy to you and to me? Make the standard mutual. Manipulation hates mirrors. Test with small no's. Not dramatic, just steady. No, not tonight. No, that doesn't work for me. A real ally adjusts. A user escalates. Their reaction tells you everything. And remember this, a strength used against you is still a strength. It's just pointed the wrong way. Turn it around. Kindness with a clock. Honesty with care. Loyalty with exit doors. Calm with action when needed. You don't have to stop being you. You just stop letting them spend you. Because the moment you refuse the crown that cuts, your strength stop being burdens and start being your armor. Hear that quiet clink? It's the sound of a memory turned into a handcuff. The ruthless reminder shows up when someone keeps dragging your past mistake into the present to steer the moment. It's a leash made of words. You try to speak, and they tug. You try to move forward, and you feel that pull. Remember when you messed up. It's not about truth. It's about control. Why does it work? Because shame is sticky. We're wired to fix what we broke, to make it right. So when someone says, after what you did, your body leans forward to repay a debt that never seems to end. The ledger never clears. The sentence gets extended. And suddenly, today's conversation isn't about today anymore. Sound familiar? You apologize again, even though you've already apologized. You offer more, even though you've already made amends. You walk on eggshells, hoping this time they won't bring it up. Here's the twist. Constant reminders aren't accountability. They're leverage. Accountability looks like repair, boundaries, and then a path forward. Leverage looks like scorekeeping, moving goalposts, and an audience of one who always gets to win. So how do you spot it in the wild? Listen for the always and never. Notice when the past is used as a stamp to approve every accusation in the present. If every new disagreement circles back to the same old headline, you're not in a conversation. You're in a loop. And how do you step out? Try naming the pattern, calmly and clearly. I've owned that mistake and made amends. I'm not agreeing to be punished for it forever. Short, plain, steady, set time boundaries. I'm willing to talk about what's happening now. I'm not revisiting that old issue again. If they drag the past back in, pause. Repeat the boundary like a broken record. Not louder, just consistent. Shift from guilt to criteria. What does repair look like specifically so we can move forward? If there's no specific finish line, that's a signal. Without a finish line, there's only control. And if you recognize the ruthless reminder in yourself, take a breath. Ask what you actually want. Safety, reassurance, a sign it won't happen again. Trade the whip for a request. Here's what would help me feel safe going forward. Then let the past return to the past. That's not weakness. That's strength. One more thing. If they refuse every boundary, if they cling to the reminder like a badge, believe what that reveals. You don't have to keep paying a bill that's been settled. You're allowed to protect your peace. You're allowed to say, I won't live under that sentence. Memory can be a mirror or a weapon. Choose the mirror. Walk toward repair. And when the leash tugs, feel it. Then unclip it. Quietly, steadily, and keep walking. The kindest sentence in the room is sometimes the sharpest knife. I'm only doing what's right. It sounds noble, soft, safe. But listen closer. Sometimes that line is a curtain, pulled tight to hide a grab for power, money, or status. That's feigning morality, using ethics like armor on the outside and a blade on the inside. You've seen it. A coworker blocks your idea for the integrity of the team, then quietly pushes their own. A leader quotes fairness, then rewrites the rules so every decision roots through them. A friend insists on boundaries, but only when your needs cost them something. The language is pure, the outcome is convenient. That's the tell. So how do you spot the mask? Start with timing. Real ethics show up early and consistently. Feigned ethics arrive at the exact moment they protect the speaker. Notice selectivity. Do the standards apply when there's a price to pay, or only when they benefit the person invoking them? And here's the twist. Watch for sacrifice. Genuine values carry weight. They ask for effort, time, even reputation. If the moral stance never costs the person anything, you're not looking at a stance. You're looking at a strategy. Another sign is fog. When someone paints their move as universally good, but can't name the trade-offs, they're selling a halo, not a plan. A clear conscience can handle clear questions. What's the downside? Who's paying the price? Why now? Ever notice the goalposts move? One day, it's about transparency. The next, it's about consensus. Then suddenly, it's about tradition. If the principle morphs to fit the outcome, the principle isn't the driver. The outcome is. So what do you do without turning into a cynic? Ask for specifics. Which principle are we upholding, and how will we measure it? Bring receipts. Here's what this choice will cost, and who absorbs that cost. Invite skin in the game. If this is the ethical route, what are you personally willing to trade? And set mirrors, not traps. Let's apply this standard to my idea and yours the same way. Will that feel confrontational? Maybe. But confrontation isn't cruelty, it's clarity. And clarity is how you separate virtue from control. Here's the uncomfortable part. We're not immune to this trick. We all like to look good while getting what we want. Catch yourself when moral words rise to cover a selfish impulse. Pause. Name the impulse. If it still matters after the blush of self-protection, speak plainly. I want this because it benefits me, and here's how it affects others. Honesty doesn't make you weak. It makes the room smarter. Real ethics have fingerprints, consistency, cost, transparency. They leave marks. Feigning morality leaves a glow and no footprint. When the glow feels blinding, slow down. Ask steady questions. Look for the footprint. And if it isn't there, you're not looking at a value. You're looking at a move. Here's a cruel magic trick that doesn't use cards. It uses people. A group feels uneasy. Tension is rising. And then, someone points. One person gets circled in red. The room exhales. The trick worked. Fear turns into certainty, and the group feels safe. That's the scapegoat trick. It's ancient. It's efficient. And it's everywhere. Families, teams, classrooms, friend groups. The group takes its messy, complicated problems and pours them into one human container. That person becomes the lightning rod. The storm still exists, but the strikes hit them instead of the roof. Why does it feel so good? Because blame is fast. It's clean. It creates a story with a clear villain and a simple fix. Remove the person, and peace returns. Our brains love a neat narrative, especially when we're tired, scared, or trying to protect our sense of belonging. But here's the price. When a group uses a scapegoat, the real causes go unexamined. The skill gaps, the broken process, the ambiguous goals, they stay underground. Cruelty becomes normal, and people learn that safety depends on silence. And the target, they carry the group's anxiety as if it were their own. How do you spot it? Listen for vagueness. They're just not a team player. Notice the moving target. Yesterday, it was missed deadlines. Today, it's attitude. Tomorrow, it'll be something else. Watch for laughter that hides discomfort. Jokes that isolate. Nicknames that shrink a person. And pay attention to the sudden relief in the room after blame lands. That rush of ease is the tell. How do you resist the trick without turning yourself into the next target? Start with questions that bring the problem back to the system, not the person. Try. What exactly happened, and how often? Then, if this person were out tomorrow, what would still be broken? That line snaps focus back to reality. Name the pattern gently. I'm noticing we're putting a lot on one person. Can we check if there are process issues here too? You're not accusing, you're widening the frame. Ask for a test instead of a verdict. Could we try a small change for 1 week and see if outcomes improve? Scapegoating thrives on finality. Experiments reopen curiosity. Watch your pronouns. When you hear they, ask for we. What can we adjust? It shifts the group from punishment to ownership. And if you're the target, breathe. Ground yourself in facts. Ask for specifics, timelines, and the metric that would mean success. Invite a neutral check. Can we review the workflow with someone outside the team? You're not defending your worth, you're surfacing the system. Remember, the scapegoat trick is a shortcut to false peace. Real safety takes longer. It asks for honest data, uncomfortable conversations, and shared responsibility. It's slower, yes, but it's sturdy. When the finger points, pause. Ask what the finger is trying to hide. Then turn the room from blame to repair, from fear to courage, from they to we. You can hear it in the quiet click of a phone that stops ringing. Not a fight, not a storm, just a closing door. One day you're useful, the next day you're invisible. That shift has a name. It's calculated abandonment. At its core, It's not loyalty, it's leverage. You matter when you make things easier, faster, shinier. And when you don't, they lighten the load by tossing you overboard. Clean, efficient, cold. Here's how it feels in real life. A coworker rides your energy through a messy project. Late nights, shared wins, promised lunches. Then the project ends. A new opportunity opens for them, one you couldn't help with. Your texts get the polite delay. Been slammed, talk later. Later never comes. No blow-up, no goodbye. Just a fade. Why does this keep happening? Psychologically, this taps into the mental math of reciprocity, the quick, unconscious ledger where people track what they get and what they give, and some folks value utility over connection. When the balance tips, they decide you're no longer an asset. They won't say it. They'll just drift. So how do you spot it sooner? Listen for questions that only point one way. Not, how are you, but can you? Watch the pattern, not the moment. They sprint to celebrate your wins, because your wins open doors, but vanish during your rebuilds. And here's the tell most people miss. They praise the access you give more than the effort you make. That's not intimacy, that's inventory. What do you do when you suspect it? Start with a small, inconvenient ask and see what happens. Ask for a boundary and watch their reaction. See how they treat the person who has nothing to offer them. An assistant, a barista, a friend going through a slow season. That's the preview. Is this harsh? Maybe. But it's not about becoming cynical. It's about becoming clear. Clarity saves you from the slow bleed. Here's the reframe. Don't chase closeness with people who treat every bond like a bridge to the next thing. Build with people who stay when the party ends. Invest where there's mutual care, not just mutual benefit. And name what you see, out loud, so you stop gaslighting yourself about the pattern you're in. What if you've abandoned someone in the past? Own it and reach out. The apology isn't magic, but it's a start. Not to win them back. Maybe that ship has sailed, but to adjust the kind of person you're becoming. What if you can't cut them off? Some ties are tangled. Family, work, old obligations. Then you adjust access. Keep your center steady. Share less. Expect less. Protect what's tender in you from what's transactional in them. Will this make your circle smaller? For a while, yes, but it makes your circle real. In a world that rewards the quick pivot, remember this quiet power. You are not a tool. You are not a stepping stone. Choose people who choose you when there's nothing to gain but presence. In the end, the only antidote to calculated abandonment is deliberate connection. Slow, consistent, and not for sale. You know that friend who smiles through the whole storm? Then, right when the sun breaks, they open an umbrella and stand under someone else's shade. That's the final betrayal. Not loud, not messy, just perfectly timed. Why wait until the last moment to switch sides? Because the last moment is where leverage lives. Early on, everything's foggy. No one knows who's winning, who's bluffing, who's bleeding. If you pick too soon, you marry uncertainty. But if you linger, if you stay friendly with both camps, you collect information like spare keys. And when the door finally matters, you choose the one that opens. It sounds cold, right? It is. And it's common. People do it at work when projects compete for resources. They do it in friendships when groups split. They do it in politics, sports, even tiny daily favors. The trick is simple. Act loyal, speak softly, keep receipts, and hold your decision until the outcome hardens. Then switch. Minimum cost, maximum reward. Here's the twist though. It doesn't look like betrayal to the person doing it. It looks like smart timing. It looks like staying neutral or not burning bridges. They tell themselves, I'm just waiting for more proof. And who argues with proof? The switch happens so late that people are exhausted. The battle's almost decided, and calling them out feels like starting a new fight after the war is over. But notice this. The power isn't only in the switch. It's in how they keep both sides invested. A check-in message here, a helpful tip there, a little empathy for everyone's pain. They feed both fires just enough so neither burns out without them. Then, at the edge of the finish line, they step behind the hottest flame and say, I was with you all along. Is it always evil? Not always. Sometimes it's survival. Sometimes it's caution. But when it's calculated, when someone withholds their true choice so they can harvest the winner's spoils, yeah, that's betrayal. It's the moment a hand that felt safe becomes a hand that lets go. So what do you watch for? Hesitation that never resolves. Warmth that never deepens. Vague promises that keep being revisited. A pattern of showing up only when the outcome is clear. If someone won't plant their flag even when the ground is solid, they're waiting for a better flag. And if you're tempted to play this game yourself, ask one question. What's the cost of being the person who always arrives late to loyalty? You may win today's battle. You may collect favors and applause. But trust, once cracked, it doesn't snap back. People remember who helped when things were muddy. They remember who stood still when it would have hurt to move. In the end, the final betrayal buys a prize that looks shiny and spends like ash. Choose your moment, but choose your side, before the sun decides for you.